Band Yap is proudly sponsored by Troubadour Consultants. When it comes to planning group travel for your fine arts program, look no further than Troubadour Consultants. Whether you're organizing a major out-of-state trip or need top-notch accommodations for the state marching contest, John Mize and his team are ready to create a custom travel experience that meets your band's unique needs. As a family-owned, band director-run company, Troubadour understands exactly what it takes to make your trip stress-free and seamless. Plus, when you book a trip with Troubadour, they will sponsor a $500 college scholarship for a student in your band. Directors who book will also receive a free Mollard baton as a special thank you. Visit troubadourconsultants.com today to start planning your next trip with the experts who truly get it.
This was back in the heyday of Ann McGinty and John Edmonds.
Oh, yes.
And how every title sounded like a retirement village in Arizona. You know? I can tell within 2 minutes what the culture is in that panel. I mean, and that's how obvious it should be. You know, whether it's, especially on the positive side, you should be able to feel that culture when you walk into that band hall.
Hello and welcome back to Band Yap. My name is Alexa Sanchez.
And I'm Jose Sanchez.
We have the Nolan Ryan of band directors here today on Band Yap, which is Mr. Chris McClellan. Hi, Chris.
Hello, how are y'all?
And I was informed that we have a Nolan Ryan story right off the bat. Do you have a Nolan Ryan story, Chris?
Well, I have a Nolan Ryan story in the fact that I was at the game where he beat the crap out of Robin Ventura.
Oh yeah,
that's a core memory right there.
I know.
That is like,
how was
that?
It was amazing. I was in college, and there was a group of us from college band that had gone to the game that night. We were sitting in the outfield, and this is at the original ballpark, the old Arlington Stadium where this happened. And we're sitting in the outfield, and the outfield at that park was kind of rowdy anyway. But as soon as that happened and Ventura starts to charge the mound, I mean, everybody's going crazy. There's people out there in the outfield that are throwing things onto the field. I mean, they're just all pumped up and amped up. And of course, they start showing what's happening on the screen, which was kind of over to our left and away. We couldn't see it real well, but we could see what was going on, and we could see the blood, and we could see, him basically giving him the knuckle, in the face, and just repeatedly whacking his face. It's kind of like, it was thrilling. It's like, I love a good hockey game when there's a fight right in front of me on the glass, and I love a good baseball game when the bench is clear. I don't know. I'm not a violent person, but
that day you're like, yes.
But it was just something about it. And then the fact that, as soon as it's over with, he's got blood all over his shirt, and he just goes back to pitching like nothing happens. It was pretty fun. I mean, the rest of the game was inconsequential. It was just, everybody was just a buzz about that fight, or not really fight, the pounding.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of the game's kind of a letdown at that point.
Yeah. It really was. But yeah, that's my Nolan Ryan story.
What's the fight that everyone refers to where that dude just got like his butt whooped?
That was the Toronto Blue Jays.
The Blue Jays.
Yes.
Yeah. Sliding into, Roofnet Odor just pops up and just.
Golly, like that.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if band directors settled like discrepancies, or like, hey, we're gonna, I don't agree with this concert sight reading judge, and you just throw hands.
I was gonna say that. It would be a judging situation.
I've had some pretty interesting confrontations with some folks.
This is the perfect person to talk to them about that.
Have you personally, were you as the judge, or you
No.
executive secretary?
As the executive secretary, yeah, you'll hear lots of just, have to witness little temper tantrums from time to time.
Yeah,
it's nothing. I mean, people are going to get upset when they don't get what they think they should get, or, what they wanted to get. And, it's a subjective activity. And I was, coming up as a young band director, I was pretty emotional in that way when I was young, where I would get overly excited or overly upset about things. And the time that I worked with George Strickland, we would we would host marching contests at that time. This is back in the day where all three of us would wear, suits on region marching contest day, and the band directors would put a boutonniere on our lapel, and the whole thing. I mean, it was just this big. And I was the most, I guess, animated of the three of us when it came to marching band, because that was kind of my first, my main thing there was being in charge of, or really kind of working with the marching band a lot. And so I would get pretty animated, and George would be like, "Okay, it's contest day. You stand on the sideline and you do not react to anything that happens, good or bad. You just stand there and don't react." And so he was real good about teaching that and about modeling that. And so my whole career, basically was, you know, there's not going to be any reaction in front of an audience or in front of the kids. You know, I can react however I want to when I get home, but not in front of other folks, because even if it's good, there may be another group there that didn't do very well, and you're sitting there jumping up and down and, whatever. It could be the same thing when you're in the finals meeting at area and they're fixing to tell you who's going to state contest, and I've been in those meetings before where people went on to state and jumped up and down and were screaming and yelling and fist pumping and high fiving and all that stuff. Well, you've got at least half the group that's in there that didn't make it, and so it's like, just hold your reaction until the appropriate time, because some people are very upset, and you have the right to be very happy. But it's just kind of this professionalism thing that he always stressed, and so I kind of took that with me. But yeah, you'll hear some interesting things as an executive secretary about a judge or about a comment or about their rating or whatever, and that's fine. I mean, that's who they're supposed to tell. That's who they're supposed to complain to.
It's funny that you say like you're the animated one and that you're like you had this certain intensity to you, which is funny because like I know you now, and you have honestly one of the most calming deliveries of like just words that I've ever encountered with anyone. Like you say things and it's just like very calming and just like, well, why are you upset?
Yeah.
And it brings everything down to a large degree, which like I appreciate. But so like imagining you like as a hype man is a little difficult for me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's just been my journey. I've changed, and I know I've changed a ton, even since I retired from band directing. The experiences that I've had since then in doing different roles and different things that I've had to do has changed my outlook, my um, just demeanor, I think, in some ways, but also going from, being an assistant for the first basically 9 years of my career, and then taking over after George Strickland and Glenn Rose and having to do that for 6 years. And now I'm in charge of a small staff. There was three of us, but I'm in charge of a staff. And then going from there and going to Springtown, where now that staff size is doubled to six, and having to kind of learn how to navigate those changes. And I think that I learned the most going to Springtown, because when I took over at Glen Rose, all the kids that already knew me, they were in my junior high program. That was an easy transition. When I went to Springtown, a lot of the kids at the high school knew me because Jeremy Strickland was the previous director. Jeremy was one of my students at Glen Rose. Um, he would have me come out twice a year and clinic the band. I'd go out once during marching season. I'd go out and clinic the top high school band in concert season. So I had exposure with those kids. And so he and I thought it would make it a little bit easier transition too. Um, which the harder transition, I think, was moving into a staff where almost all of them were there before me, and then having to kind of learn how to navigate that and incorporate them into decisions, and just learning the dynamics of what was already there. that was hard. And I think so. That's a big part of what I think has molded me and changed me. Um, but yeah, I am much more, I guess, mild mannered now than I used to be. I'd have parents come in and be upset about something, and I just don't let people upset me like that. I'm not going to get worked up, and they would get mad at me because I wouldn't get worked up. And I'm just like, okay, what? Sorry you feel that way. But they
Yeah,
would literally tell me, I can't get a rise out of you. You just don't get mad. I'm like, no, it's not worth getting mad over. So I don't know. I think that's just age and experience.
yeah. Well, this was discussed like earlier today that like at one point in time I used to be a much more of a larger hothead.
I use the word hothead.
Yeah, you said hothead. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And like I can recall like last year I had an interaction with a parent, and this parent was just like irate because we were holding their child accountable, and this parent came in just like spitting and cussing and just nasty towards me. And I go, ma'am, if we can't have this in a civilized discussion and in a manner that is productive for both you and myself, this conversation would no longer happen. And she lost her mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like I'm not going to engage in that type of behavior, partially because like I just don't have the energy to do it anymore.
Well, it's just not worth it. I mean, it's like we have enough stress on us as human beings, but especially band directors and stuff. Like we are the worst at taking care of ourselves. We are wired to take care of everybody else first before we take care of ourselves, and that was you know a big reason into why I retired when I did was because of my health issues that I was having because of just not taking care of myself properly. And so I've learned over the years that it's just not worth it. It's not worth getting mad or worked up or stressing yourself out about it, because there are a lot more important things to put your energy towards than somebody who's upset because you held their student accountable, or they didn't get drum major position, or they didn't get the solo that they tried out for, or whatever it was. So
I had a way less serious question for Chris. And my question was is if he was a WWE fan.
not at all.
I figured since you liked, Nolan Ryan fighting people that you might.
Yeah, I mean, like, no, I'm not. And I don't, when I was a kid, there used to be, I'd go with my best friend and we would go down to the old Cowtown Coliseum and watch Friday night wrestling. And this was back when the Von Erichs were big and all of that. And one time we had like ringside seats. I mean, we were just right underneath the action basically. And I found out at that point how fake everything was. And I was just like, all right, this no longer interests me.
He wants the
Because up
real
until
thing.
that point, I thought, man, these guys are really, it's like
That's the thing about the baseball stuff is it's authentic.
Yeah. That's why Chris can never be a vegetarian. What is this? This is fake. Get this out of here. Don't fake your part.
Yeah.
So, man, we've derailed early on.
It's okay.
So, Chris, we're going to backtrack it. So, we found out a lot about you already. Can you give us a little bit more about your background and your education, and then kind of how you made your way up into the position you are now?
Sure. Grew up in Arlington, Texas. My first band director was Barbara Lambrick, who was Barbara.
Nobody big. Meh.
No, I will tell you, my pedigree is ridiculous. And growing up, I had no clue. They were just my band directors. But now, all of them are in the Band Director Hall of Fame. I mean, all of them, basically.
That's crazy.
And so when I was and I didn't start band until 8th grade, because at that point in my life, I was very fixated on girls. I'll just be honest. And
That's why
my
I did, Dan.
and well, my mindset was, what can I do to meet girls, get a girl to like me, right? And so my 7th grade year, I tried out for football, and that's what I was going to do was football, and then I'm going to find me a cheerleader and all that stuff. Which I did play football for a little while, and then I got hurt, and then I didn't play anymore. But I did date a cheerleader, date in air quotes, okay. My 7th grade year for a half a day. She sent a friend over before school. We were hanging out outside the school to ask me if we could go out, and I was like, yeah, because she was pretty, and I knew who she was, and she was popular. I was like, sure. And then we ate lunch together that day, and we had one class together where we kind of talked a little bit, and we ate lunch together that day. And then after lunch, she sent that same friend over and said, yeah, she wants to break up. I was like, okay.
Junior high
That's the most
relationships.
middle school thing I've
Yeah,
ever heard.
that was it.
Yeah, that's totally the most middle school thing ever. But since I got hurt playing football and it was my knee that I messed up, I was like, all right, what's the next coolest thing I can do? Like, I want to do something. And when I was in elementary school, we had this talent show where this kid came on stage. It's like 3rd grade, literally 3rd grade talent show. And Tom Sawyer, Rush had just come out, that album and that song. And this kid gets up on stage with a drum set and totally plays the whole piece, with the recording going and everything, and just nails Tom Sawyer on drum set. And I'm like, that was the most awesome thing I ever saw. And from that point on, I wanted to play drums. I just didn't really know how to get into it. And so that was my thinking was, okay, well, I'm going to try out for band. I'm going to try out for drums. And so my mom called and figured out how to do that at the end of my 7th grade year. And I went down and did an audition with Miss Lambert. And she said, it was me and one other kid that she pulled into her office, and she said, okay, I don't care how many other kids come in and try out. You two are in. You're going to play percussion. It's like, okay, cool. Awesome. And so that's how it started was Gunn Junior High in Arlington, Texas, who the year before they were like the 3B honor band under her. And, I mean, like this was a storied program that I had no clue,
Did you just say 3B?
Yeah, it was a junior high. Do you know the difference between 3C and 3B?
No.
Okay, so 3C is 7th and 8th grade. The middle school is a 7th and 8th grade campus. A junior high was classified, and there's only a couple of these left in the state now, as 7th, 8th, and 9th grade campus. And at that time in Arlington, 7th and 8th and 9th was junior high, 10, 11, and 12 was high school. So I didn't start marching band until 10th grade because we were in junior high through 9th grade. So a 7, 8, 9 campus is a B. They go by B's instead of C's.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I've seen it on the thing when you register. It's a choice.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure
there's
it is.
literally just a couple of school districts left. For some reason, I think, and it may not be anymore. I was thinking HEB was still that way. Like Bedford Junior High was like a 3B. It may not be anymore. And it may be like there's one out in West Texas that's still that way. But yeah, there are very few anymore. But back in the 80s, I'm going to date myself, that was very normal, was to have junior highs instead of middle schools.
I think where I've seen it is on the sight reading, or like on the UIL when you look at what's required for bands to play, like for sight reading and from the PML. I think it says on there all of them.
It'll say like 3C, 3B, 2C, 2B, those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the thing. After my 8th grade year, they opened up a new junior high, and I got transferred over there, which was Workman Junior High. And then I was in band there, and then went to Martin High School and was under Jim McDaniel, which I want to take a second just to say this in case anybody's listening who knows Jim. Jim is in hospice. He was just put there this past week. He was diagnosed with leukemia like a month ago, and it's just been a real struggle since. And I'm hoping I can go see him on Thursday. That's my plan. But we're just kind of day to day right now on that. But Jim has been a massive influence in my life. And it's kind of funny because I don't think he ever even knew that I left high school and went to major in music. Because I was just one of those drummers, in the back who wasn't really in band in the 80s. Like for us was different. Like my band hall office was full of kids at lunchtime every day, when we would just yap it up, for lack of a better word. Okay. And just visit. Okay. That was not the case in the 80s in Mr. McDaniel's band hall. You were only in the office if you were in trouble. And I only went in there one time and I was in trouble. But he had just this demeanor about him that just demanded excellence. And that was what I learned from his program. And then one year early in my career, I'm sitting in the Marriott River Center lobby at TMEA. Mr. McDaniel walks by. He looks at me and just keeps walking, and then he stops and does a double take. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "I'm a band director." He's like, "What? No way!" I was like, "Yeah." And ever since that point, like he's just kind of been involved in my career. When I was at Glen Rose, I started the Paluxy Valley contest, and he was one of the original judges. The first year of that, I had him come out and be a judge. And every spring from that point on, he's come out and clinicked my high school band. Would never let me pay him. It's like, no, you're one of my kids. I'm coming out and I am clinicking your band, which is the way I treat my kids now that are band directors. Like, you want me to come work with your band? I'm coming. You don't need to pay me. You don't need to do anything. That's just part of the band family, right? And but he did that every year, and I would secretly send him and his wife Susan a Del Frisco's gift card or something at Christmas, just so that he couldn't say no. I would just mail him a Christmas card with the gift card for just thanking him for all that he would do for me. One year, like one of the first years at Springtown that we made state finals in marching band, I'm sitting there at the back of the trailer talking to the group after prelims and, talking about when we're performing in finals and all that stuff. And I turn around and Mr. McDaniel's standing behind me in the trailer. He'd come up on the side and, just that kind of person who was just going to support you and everything. But I did want to kind of bring that out, just that he unfortunately may not be with us much longer. And that's going to be a hard thing for me and a hard thing for a lot of people, I understand. But yeah, that's where my journey started in Arlington, Texas, was with Miss Lambrick, who was Miss Prentice at the time, Miss Lambrick and Mr. McDaniel. So that was
that continues to say, like, the reach we have as educators. It doesn't have to stop at the end of your senior year, or
no.
like at the, and that's like, it's such a hard thing, having band kids, because like they eventually leave you, in a lot of ways, but you always have that special place for them.
Yeah.
And I think I've talked about this before, but like our staff, something that we do, and like if we have any kids listen to the podcast, whatever, you're going to hear about it, you might hear about it, but the staff writes personal letters to our seniors about their experiences and the things that we appreciate about them, and the journey that we've seen them go through. And it doesn't have to stop. It's just like the whole entire thing. Did you see the thing about Mr. Ferroni? Did you
No.
ever? Okay, so Mr. Ferroni was a band clinician and a band director in like primarily South Texas, and I believe Reagan Brumley made a big push for it. But Mr. Ferroni was he didn't have any family, he didn't have anything. Band directing was his life, and he was like on his, like, he was in hospice and he was at the end, and like there was going to be no one to pay for his funeral, or be involved in that extent. And like there was a group of band directors that made a post, and it gained a lot of traction, and they were able to have a band director. Actually, my head director is a deacon down in South Texas, and like resided over the service, and they found like a priest to do things, and they were able to pay for his funeral with donations.
Yeah.
But like that tells you how far like things can spread through music and like the love and the community of what we do.
Well, and that's happened recently here with, I don't know if you guys know Doug Hazelwood. Doug Hazelwood was a very big band clinician and figure in the band world. He was at Southwest High School in Fort Worth for a long time. But, when I was at Glen Rose, Doug would come out and clinic our junior high bands and stuff. And he worked for Ridgely Music as a road guy, but was just kind of Mr. Band to everybody. And in the Fort Worth area, Arlington area especially, probably was in every band hall at some point, and so, but Doug recently passed and he has no family left or anything like that. And so Joe Dokas had put out a GoFundMe to kind of raise some money to pay for Doug's an appropriate funeral for him and a remembrance for him. Last time I checked, I donated to it this past week, but I think the goal was 3,500, and it was well over that. And it's just from people who, he's affected their lives, whether it be through band directing or they were in his band or he clinicked their band or whatever. But it's the same type of thing as what you're talking about with Mr. Ferroni. I mean, just somebody who's had an impact, and then the band family steps up to make sure that so.
Well, and that also like is also a consistent reminder of like how much we pour into other people and we don't pour into ourselves. That's like you have to fill your cup, and like something I have to remind myself of all the time is that like I don't want to die alone.
Yeah.
That's something that like the vision of my more mortality, that is, that that's something like I don't want, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my family for the job. And I think a lot of people do that, and that's like, and if that's your is that if that is your decision and that is your journey, that is your cross to bear.
Yeah.
But like that is not the cross I'm gonna bear.
Yeah.
Because like that, honestly, that's a big fear of mine, is that like I put my career first and I end up sacrificing things I shouldn't like sacrifice. And that's like a hard thing, especially if you're a type A person and you're driven and you want to be successful.
Yeah. Well, that was something that was hard for me. And I mean, my wife's a saint. She was a band director widow for a lot, and it was challenging for me because my wife is a teacher. Uh, she has a music degree and a math degree, and she teaches AP statistics at Alito High School. And because I didn't want our boys to have to endure my hours as a band director and go to Springtown where I was teaching, and who knows what time they would get home, and just the whole thing. We made the decision when they were in kindergarten. They're going to go to Alito and they're going to be with mom. And the thing that was challenging about that was they were both in the Alito band program, and here I am directing the Springtown band program. And although we're 20 miles apart geographically, they're going to this contest when I'm going to that contest. I'm at this football game while they're at that football game. And there was just times when I had to make the decision, and my staff would be great about it. It's like, okay, it's mass band night or it's whatever, and I want to go see my kids play. And they'd be like, go, we'll take care of the game tonight, that type of thing. Um, Both my boys, especially my older boy, Ian, he was big into baseball, and I was not going to miss a baseball game. He was a pitcher. And so, especially if he was pitching, dad's going to be there. We're going to make sure that we're there doing those things. But there was still a lot of time that I invested into my career, and you guys know, to have a successful program and to do all the things that, to teach all the kids all the things that you want them to learn, which is so much more than just notes and rhythms. It's not the music. I always tell my kids and my staff that music is the vehicle that we use to teach them life lessons and become good human beings, right? I mean, some people use football, some people use choir, some people use whatever as that vehicle. Band was our vehicle. And although music is an important part of that vehicle. I mean, that's kind of the engine of the vehicle. Um, that's not the most important part about what we do. And so, in order to do all those things and have that kind of impact on kids who, in Springtown, I would say almost half my kids that were either from single parent homes or lived with grandparents, or, they needed positive adult role models in their life. They needed a place to just hang out until we kicked them out, till we were going home. They would be in the band home. They'd be there waiting on us in the morning, those types of things. And so, in order to do those things, it took time away from family time. Um, and so, if there's anything that I wish I had done better as a band director, was trying to delegate a little bit more, not always have to be involved in everything or feel like I had to be involved in everything because I was, the head band director. It's like I always felt guilty if I tried to um, delegate something, because then I felt like I'm not doing my job, and that was just hard for me. Um, but now my wife's still teaching. She has another year before she can retire. And for the last 4 years, I've been making up for lost time with house duties, and I do all the cooking, I do most of the cleaning, I do shopping, I do,
Yeah,
all the things.
that honey-do list got really big in all that time, huh?
Well, but she never has. Like, she's never expected it or said, "Hey, I need you to do this," or "Hey, I need you to do that." It's just I've got the time now to do those things, and she's now, really busy with her job. And our oldest just graduated from college, and he's starting his career in nursing. And in fact, we just moved him to his new job this past Saturday. And my youngest is still a junior in high school, and we're starting the whole college process with him, and fixing to start the college tours and all the applications, and all of that stuff. And she's real busy at school. She's an incredible teacher, just lights out, and amazing. She's been on TV because of her teaching. Um, it's just been crazy, all the things that she does. But and she now runs a huge fundraiser for the class of 2026, where she started a huge craft fair in the spring at Lido High School, and she does like 99% of the work for that. And so, me being home now has kind of allowed her to kind of branch out a little bit more too. Um, and so it's been good. I mean, it's been good. But there was never a point in time where I felt like I wasn't supported by her. She was a band kid too. She was a drum major in high school. She understood, and she had a very strong um, father figure type band director, so that she really respected. And she always told me that one of the things that attracted her to me was that I had some of those same qualities. Just kind of that father figure that cared about the kids and stuff like that. And
I figured
so,
it was your drummer body, quite honestly.
yeah. You mean the bass drum that I permanently carry around? but but yeah, but that's she always got it. She got it. And so that made it easy. But at the same time, I still wish that I had carved out more time to be dad, and less time to be band dad, so to speak. That's the way I did it. So
So you went to Martin High School, and then after Martin High School, where did you go?
I went to UTA for a year, and that was when UTA had just dropped their football program.
Hmm.
And so
What
my
was that
freshman,
like?
yeah, so it was the fall of '87, and they still had a marching band. It was a really good marching band, but all we did was exhibitions. We would play at a few Friday night football games, and then we would play at a lot of contests, as the exhibition band and things like that. And I remember the show. I had made the snare line as a freshman. We were doing the planets as our show, and it was a lot of fun. I loved it. But the thing that really stunk about it, being a band or a music major, was as a freshman, we were assigned practice room times to get in with a marimba or any of the big, equipment. And my practice room time was from 10 p.m. to midnight. That's when I could get into a practice room. And I lived 25 minutes from campus. It was my hometown school. I hated driving up there at night and then driving back home and having to get back up for an 8 a.m. class, and it was just a drag. And there wasn't really it didn't feel like a college to me because there wasn't that college atmosphere, spirit. At that time, it was a commuter school.
What do you mean, Chris, by the college atmosphere?
He just said it was a commuter school.
Well,
commuter school. Wink,
yeah, wink, wink, wink. Fun fact about me, I'm not a party person, and I've never even had a single alcoholic drink in my life. So that was not what I meant by the college experience. It was just, the football games, the pep rallies, the whole,
spirit.
Spirit of
the ambiance. Well, that's why people do
Yeah.
baseball. Since you're such a big baseball fan, which we'll get into again later. But I can't stand watching baseball on TV. I just can't do it. And part of the reasons for that is because I've sat through so many baseball games. And it's about the ambiance and the feeling.
Atmosphere,
yeah.
the
I mean, the
vibe.
smell of
Yeah.
the stadium,
Yeah.
and the hot dogs and the popcorn. That's what baseball is to me.
Popcorn.
Popcorn.
Yeah. Baseball to
definitely
me is Wrigley Field in June when it's still 60 degrees because the wind is blowing off Lake Michigan and the bratwursts and the onions are grilling behind you. And it's just this amazing baseball atmosphere that you don't get anywhere else, yeah, I get that. And I watch baseball on TV, but you're right, it is not the same experience.
Yeah. I'm an Astros fan.
Gosh.
Very loosely.
Yeah. I grew up watching,
Okay.
the Astros.
Whose World Series did you go to?
I went to the Rangers.
Yeah.
I love my brother. My brother is he's an Astros fan too. But if there is ever a chance for a World Series game in Texas, he's gonna find a way to go to that game.
Yeah.
He's been several times.
Yeah, so he's gone to several Astros World Series game, and he was like, "Hey, the Rangers are playing at home for the series. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Do I look like an idiot?" And
Was it game 5? Game 5? Game 6?
Oh, it was the one that they lost at home.
But then they won the next game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, the bats were
I'm not a baseball fan, so
it was bad. It was really
Closest I got to going to the World Series was we went to the watch party at Globe Life on the final game. I guess it was game 6 that they won in Arizona. And so we went to the watch party at the stadium, and literally they had half the stadium closed, the outfield half, but the whole bowl on the home side, first through third base side, was packed, and everything was up on the big screens and everything. And it was, I wouldn't say it was as fun of an atmosphere as a live game, but it was pretty exciting.
Well, yeah. I mean, just there's just energy in the air,
It's a nice stadium too.
I mean, that's just the way it gets. I feel like that's what happens. I was able to experience state finals for the first time in my career, and the energy that's in the air for your specifically your first time is just I don't know. It's just the first time we made state. The energy in the air was just different.
The best part of state for me, well, there's really two parts of it, and it never. We were fortunate to make state finals 4 times while I was at Springtown, and it never changed the excitement just because we did it again. Because every time we did it, it's with a different group of kids, and for many of them, for half of them or more than half of them, it's their first time, And so, but the walk to line up for finals performance and going through the tunnel, and just the intensity and energy from the kids that's focused and there's not a word spoken, and they don't have to speak a word. You can see it in their eyes. You can feel it just like just coming off of them. And I videoed it one year. I was walking with the band, and I just kind of peeled back a little bit just to get more of the kids in the picture, and just videoed them walking to the lineup for state. And that year we were actually the first ones to march in finals. And so you hear them start to talk about the Star Spangled Banner and all this stuff, and this they're just standing there with this just intensity, and it's like that is such a fun thing, you know.
I think I saw that video. I think you shared it on Facebook.
I did share it on
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think I
I've
said
shared
that.
it. I've shared it a few times because now that I've been retired, it's like when state finals come around, I'm like, okay, I got to share this again because this is just fun. And people who are fortunate enough to get to experience that, they know what that feeling is. But that, and then when you break ranks at the end,
Yeah,
of retreat, that's like that's so much fun. And we always had, when I was directing, we had this very friendly but intense rivalry with Kennedale. And Kennedale and Springtown were always kind of duking it out for area champs, and we were always duking it out in area finals for one of the places. We always seemed to end up 8, 9, 10 somewhere in that area. But it was kind of this back and forth type thing. One year we would win area, the next year they might win area. And Errol and I, the director that was there at that time, we were very competitive, but had a huge respect for each other. And one time, I think this was 2018, if I'm not mistaken, when we broke ranks after retreat. um, our kids were all, they're all hugging other bands and everything. I had some students who filmed me because I walked over to congratulate Kennedale because I think they placed fifth that year. They placed ahead of us that year. And I walked over there, and Errol and I are, we hugged each other, and we're talking to each other and everything. I had some kids videoing this without me knowing it, you know, and and I found out about it afterwards, and they showed me, and I said, "Why did you video that?" They said, "Because we think it's amazing that they're like our main competitor, like who we are striving to be as good as or better than every year, and you guys are embracing in a hug on the field at state." Like, well, yeah, because we they're the reason we get better. We're the reason they get better, and we love that about this activity, you know. So it's just kind of that type of thing. And I would see kids that had made friends in other bands, and they're all hugging, and just it's like takes us 45 minutes just to get them through,
yeah.
you know,
That's the worst part about retreat
It's
and
finding
break.
everyone
Yeah,
at
it's
the end.
finding everyone at the end. That is
finding
awful.
everyone at the end. Well, we learned after the first time because they didn't start retreat. I think the first time was maybe 2016, something like that. Um, so the first 3 or 4 times I took a band to state, we didn't do retreat like that. It was just a drum major retreat. And so after the first time we did it, it was just kind of like everybody meet back at the bus when you're done. We're just, because it was just taking forever. So we kind of learned that. But yeah, it those two things, coming onto the field for that finals performance, and then after retreat, are the two best things about it. And I can remember every performance. I can remember what we played. I can remember what kids were on the field for what show. I can remember the soloists and everything, and all those things are really special. But it's the non-musical things, I think, that make the biggest impact on the kids too. So
So UT Arlington.
one year, and then I had some buddies from high school that were at Tarleton, and they said, "Why don't you come down here? We need percussionists. It's a small program, but I think you'd fit in really well." It's like, what the heck? Let's just do it. So we did it. I went down there and I loved it. It was the right size for me, even though I'd gone to a huge high school and all that stuff. It was the right size. I was able to do everything from marching band to jazz band to percussion ensemble, whatever I wanted to do. I was able to do it. And then my directors there, Jonathan Hooper was the band director, and then Greg Ball came in probably halfway through my time there as the jazz band director and woodwind, one of the woodwind instructors. And they were both fabulous to work with. I mean, my senior year, Mr. Ball let me work up a piece with the jazz band and conduct it on my final concert. Mr. Hooper, my final semester of marching band, let me write some drill, let me write the percussion feature and teach that stuff. And I was more kind of like an assistant or a tech. And so they taught me things that I don't think I would have learned in a bigger program. Um, and so it was great. It was a perfect fit for me. Um, so I left Tarleton, taught 1 year. My first year I was at Thorndale High School, all by myself. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. Was a really bad band director, I'm sure. Um, and then left Thorndale to try to get back closer to the Metroplex because my mom had been diagnosed with colon cancer, and I wanted to be closer to home. And then I was dating my now wife, and she was at Tarleton at the time too, and which that's a another story that we might investigate, but how we met and how all that worked out. Um, but I wanted to get back closer to home, and so I took a job as the assistant band director up in Henrietta, which was not close to home, but it was closer. Spent 2 years there. Earned my first sweepstakes as the middle school director. My third year teaching. My second year there. We had gotten married in December of my second year at Henrietta. And at that point, I was kind of like, and she was at TCU at the time. She had gone to Tarleton for 2 years because she was valedictorian of her high school and got that 2 year free state school. And then after her second year, she transferred to TCU and came back home and lived at home and went to TCU. But she was still at TCU when we got married. I was living up in Wichita Falls, teaching in Henrietta. It's like, okay, we're not really married because we're not together. Um, and so I just took a leap of faith. I was like, I'm resigning. I'm going to go home, and I'll find a job wherever I have to find a job. Didn't have a job lined up. Left Wichita Falls, Henrietta area, and then came home. My wife and I went on a little mini vacation early in June up to Arkansas. And when I got home, this was before cell phones. This is like 1995, 6. So cell phones were just coming out. My dad had called or told me when we got back home that George Strickland from Glenrose had called. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, he wants you to call him back about his job interview. It's like, I haven't applied at Glenrose. He's like, well, he called. And I was like, that's too far. I don't want to drive an hour. I want to stay here in Fort Worth. And he said, well, call him back. You need to at least call him back. So I did. And then George has this very persuasive way of convincing you to do something. So he convinced me to at least come down and interview. It's like, okay. And I'm like, I didn't apply. How did you get my name? And found out that he had called up to Sam Gibbs Music in Wichita Falls and just asked them, is there any promising folks in the area that are looking for jobs? And so they gave him my name. And before George was at Glenrose, he was at Henrietta. So Henrietta had kind of a storied past. They had Barry Hurt, then they had George Strickland, and then George went to Glenrose. And there's kind of this weird interplay of the Strickland McClellan thing going on because I worked with George for 6 years. Jeremy was my student my first year at Glenrose, and I was the percussion guy. And then Jeremy made the All-State Band as a percussionist his senior year. And then George retired, went to work for UIL. I took over Glenrose. Then Jeremy became a band director. He was assistant at Springtown. then he was the head director for 3 years, and then I took over for Jeremy at Springdale. It's just been this weird, kind of thing. But anyway, George had called up to Sam Gibbs, and they gave him my name, and that's why he called me. So I went down and interviewed, and actually just kind of fell in love with the whole thing, and so I ended up doing it and driving an hour for 12 years, an hour each way to work, and it was great. I loved every minute of it, and have really fond memories of that time. In fact, this past summer, we had a reunion here at my house with a bunch of kids from Glenrose who were in my program. That was a really tight-knit group. It was the first time that school had made state marching contests since like the 80s. And there was a growth process that went into that those kids went through, which is what really, I think, made our relationship so strong. And so those kids still to this day, I mean, they'll come to the house and we'll grill burgers and chat it up and just have a good time. And so we had like 20 kids here this summer, just came and that type of thing. But yeah, so spent 6 years working with George. I was the head of the junior high program. He was the high school. I was his kind of main assistant at the high school. And then we had another person on staff, which frequently changed, our third person. And then I took over when he retired, did that for 6 years as the head director, and then went to Springtown and then spent 13 years there, retired in 2021. So that's my past. That's my pedigree, is those three that I spent the most time with, between, maybe not the most time, but were integral in my career and my progress in some way, with Barbara Lambrecht being my first teacher in band, and then high school with Jim McDaniel, and then 6 years under George as a young director, really learning how to be a band director. Those three are Hall of Famers. It's like, how did I get this lucky? Like, I never thought coming out of college that I would amount to anything as a band director. It was like, state marching contest? What? First divisions? What? Not me. I'm not that good, But God put me in the path where I came in contact with these people for a certain reason, and I truly believe that. I mean, everything that I've been able to achieve or been lucky enough to experience is because of the folks that guided me on that path. And they just happen to be some of the greatest that have done this job. So
I've met George Strickland a few different times. And like, I remember one of my first interactions with him. I was like, Mr. Strickland, he goes, just call me buddy. I'm like, oh, that just feels weird.
And you know what? Like, I never once in my life have called him buddy. Never once.
Yeah.
And all of his college friends did. And Melinda, his wife, she always refers to him as buddy. And everybody that, was with him in college or has known him for most of their life or whatever, they call him buddy. And I just never, I don't know why. I just felt like he was a mentor. And it's just like with Mr. McDaniel now. He'll tell me every time, call me Jim. I can't do that. I can't call Miss Lambrecht Barbara. I just can't. There's just this respect element there. And, and I'll call George, but, we worked together for 6 years and everything, but calling them buddy just felt too casual, I guess, is the word.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, there are some figures in our profession that, like, if they have a nickname like that, you just go like, that's just like, I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah. I never could do that.
It's like Kathy Johnson or Amanda Drinkwater. You can't just say, oh, Amanda.
Yeah.
No. It's Amanda Drinkwater. You give her the full name.
Yeah.
That's the way that works out. Then that's the way, like, George Strickland is. I don't think I could ever do that. It's just like weird.
Yeah. And I have kids now that are the same way. They're like, Mr. McClellan. I'm like, you don't have to call me Mr. McClellan. Yes, I do. And it could be a kid that, I go to their wedding or I go to their college graduation because they want me there. And it's like, Mr. McClellan, I'm like, you don't have to continue to call me that. Like, you have a master's degree now. You're married now. You have your own kid now. You don't have to call me Mr. McClellan. They're like, oh yes, I do. And I get that because I feel the same way about those folks that were that way in my life. So yeah, you're definitely. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Where is your family heritage from?
Scotland.
Scotland. Do you own a kilt?
I do.
Ooh.
We have our family tartan, which is the pattern and everything. And a few years ago, I really got into well, it wasn't a few years ago. It was about 25 years ago when my paternal grandfather passed away. Um, and he had given me this book that was about Robert the Bruce. And so if anybody's ever watched Braveheart, which
that's one of my favorite movies,
happens to be my favorite movie of all time, of course, why wouldn't it be? But this kind of the lineage of Robert the Bruce, and it's not just one Robert the Bruce, that was just a title. But he gave me this book and he said, you need to read this book because we are direct descendants of Robert the Bruce that they depict in the movie. It's like, really? He's like, yeah. And he said, and there is a McClellan castle on the the west coast of Scotland. And yes, there is. And it's still standing. It doesn't have a roof, but it has all the walls there. And it's in a little town on the west coast of Scotland. And so he started telling me all just kind of the heritage, and where we kind of came from. We were lowlanders. We weren't highlanders. So, but, it's just got very interesting to me, and so several years back, I started getting on like, what is the DNA thing,
like Ancestry.com.
Yeah, Ancestry. I started getting on and kind of researching all of that stuff, and it's like, it's very interesting to see. And my sister have been to Scotland. I haven't yet been able to go, but that's like a very bucket list thing for me is I want to go, and not just like a short vacation. Like I want to spend like a month and research and go see all the different places and really kind of understand all of that side of it. My mom's side of the family, she doesn't really know. She just always referred to herself as a mutt and doesn't really know the lineage. And I've kind of found out some things, but there's some holes in her heredity that we can't figure out. But my dad's side is very, very English, Scottish, all the way. Like it's just that kind of thing.
So do you wear the kilt in the true fashion?
You're obsessed with kilts.
Oh, I am. I like. Okay.
You're obsessed with asking people how they wear
Yes,
their kilt.
I don't actually wear it. It's just an heirloom. I mean, if I did wear it, no, I don't think I could do that unless it was just around the house. But no.
That's what you need to do. You need to show up to a region meeting.
Yeah,
in the kilt just to see the reaction. I don't know. There are just like a few like cultures I feel like I really gravitate towards just for whatever reason. The Scottish/Irish cultures are just one of them, and then the other one is the Japanese culture.
Like, yeah. My sons are both very into the Japanese culture. Of course, a lot of that's anime driven.
Yeah.
That's what their thing is. But they're very, especially my older son, he wants to go to Japan. He wants to, experience the culture and all that stuff. For me, it's very much, I'm very into the Scottish and the Viking, the Norse, all of that Northern Europe kind of culture. That's very interesting to me. And there's a lot of overlaps between those two as well. So that's kind of what I want to spend my time.
Well, so I enjoy a spirit every now and then.
Yeah.
And where the connection between the Scottish and the Japanese is that the Scots taught the Japanese how to make whiskey, and that's why Japanese whiskey tastes so much like Scotch.
I didn't know there was such a thing as Japanese whiskey.
Oh, it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole entire like culture.
Really?
Like, yeah. So like it just like how Japanese do anything, they want to be like masters of their craft.
Yeah.
And so they took that mindset and they applied it to Japanese whiskey, and it's the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So like it's pretty interesting, and I went down that rabbit hole, and I thought that was pretty like cool because it was all based on trade, and that's how that happened. But like the Scots taught the
Yeah.
Japanese to make whiskey, and that's how that whole entire industry happened.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and I've always thought to myself, if I ever did have the inkling to want to have a drink, it would be Scotch. Like that would be like, why would I not drink that if I'm if I'm going to dive into
Yeah,
that?
I can see you as like Ron Swanson.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you ever seen that bit?
Uh-uh.
So like it's from Parks and Rec, and Ron Swanson is this American of all Americans kind of guy, and he has only one thing that like is not Americana for him, and it's Scotch. And like as a gift, his like wife sent him to like Scotland to the Lagavulin distillery, and he's like reading a poem, and like the wind is blowing through his hair, and like he's like
It's a good scene.
yeah, it's a good scene. He's like shedding a tear, and it became such a movement that Nick Offerman actually has a endorsement deal with Lagavulin,
Oh, wow.
and so he has like Lagavulin whiskey that is Nick Offerman like endorsed.
Oh, yeah.
And so like he has, and actually one of the ones he has has been aged in a Guinness barrel.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Now
like
I've seen that whole thing, like how they take some of these aged barrels and other companies will buy them and then reuse them and get the flavors, start mixing the flavors and some of these craft things. Like I'm always interested in like how different things are made, or especially some of the more expensive food items, or even alcohol or whatever. Just the process of how they make some of that stuff, and how things are aged, and that stuff interests me. Like I'll sit there and watch that on TV and enjoy the heck out of it. I think I was impacted at a very young age when I was in high school that drove me to not want to have alcohol, because I had a good buddy who was on the drum line with us, and he was walking home from band rehearsal one night down this fairly busy road close to our high school, and but it was still in a residential area. And he got struck by a drunk driver. It was a hit and run, and he ended up basically being wheelchair bound and very handicapped for the rest of his life. He was a year older than me, but he ended up graduating in our class because he spent a whole year just learning how to, speak again, and not even at a full level. And I think all that must have had a real influence and an impact on me at that age. Who that I guess mentally decided that I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to get mixed up in that. And I think I'm also the personality that when I dive into something, or I like something, or I get into something, like I get all the way into it.
yeah, no,
And I was afraid like that would be a really bad thing. And so I just never had the urge or inkling, even in college and everything. I'd go to parties, and did anybody pressure you to have a drink? Like, no, not really. The most pressure I ever had was at I went to a piano bar at TMEA one year. I'm trying to remember the name of the place. Howl at the Moon. Howl at the Moon. Okay.
Any band director listening where it was all like piano bar out the moon.
But I went with some friends, and of course everybody's having a drink and all this stuff. And an acquaintance of mine who was a friend of the person I came with, he brought me a drink, just being courteous and everything. was like, "Oh, I'm good. I don't drink." He's like, "What?" It's like, come on, you gotta have a drink. I was like, "Oh, I'm good." But that's like the most pressure I ever felt in my whole entire life to have a drink. And after I told him, I said, "No, I'm good, man. I'll just have a Coke or whatever." He stopped. It's like, "Okay, that's fine." But like, nobody ever really, I just never did, and I think people just respected that I don't want to do that. That's fine, you know. Um,
Leave it to the
and my
band
wife will
director.
have a cocktail from now and again, and she's funny because she can have one drink and she gets so giggly. It's just like it's fun. It's funny because she'll just start giggling at everything, and she's like, "My face is numb," and she starts giggling, and like I'll have to walk her out of the restaurant after one drink. It's like, and it's like a martini or some foo kind of drink. And she's funny. But and I've never like been like, "Oh, you drink, I'm not going to hang out with you." That's never been the thing. It's just been a personal thing, personal decision for myself. And but yeah, like I think that's why, as I was impacted at that age with that kind of situation, and that's the only logical reason I can think of, because
That makes
Well,
sense,
yeah,
though.
and that's like a big thing. Well, it's just like anything else that there are certain things that are like core memories or core influences, and
yeah.
like that. I mean, like I can remember like the experience that shaped my impression of like athletics and like uh, that shaped my career is like I was given a hard time about being in band and athletics, and I had a coach tell me like point blank, like, why are you in band? Like, just give me a
Why are you
really
wasting your time with
why are
all
you
that?
wasting your time with band? And like that has still stuck with me, and that has molded the way I approach students
Hmm.
when they're like in other activities.
Well,
Because
that's yeah.
I mean, I just never wanted to feel like that way, and I don't want my kids feeling that way.
Well, and my experience was similar but different. I didn't have a coach, like, "Why are you in band?" I went to what at the time in 19 mid 80s was the largest high school under one roof in the state of Texas. So, and we were just 10 through 12, and we had like 3,500 students. And so, in that situation, there were so many kids that you just couldn't do more than one thing. It just really didn't allow it. And I was a really good baseball player. I played catcher. I was a pretty good hitter, and I was a really good catcher. Um, and the Martin baseball team at that time was state ranked. They were really good. I really wanted to play baseball, but I was basically just kind of like given this notification. Well, you either have to go the band route or you can go the athletics route, but you can't do both. I guess I chose the right thing ultimately, but that was hard for me because I had spent many years of my youth playing baseball and really enjoying it. But and I had friends that were on the Martin baseball team that ended up in the major leagues. Like there was some good players at Martin in the late '80s, and some of those kids I played little league with. Some of those guys were on my little league team or on opposing teams, and so I kind of grew up in that atmosphere. But when it kind of came push to shove, you gotta kind of have to choose. And I chose band, and I don't know why, but I did. I guess it was the right thing to do. But but yeah, it was a little bit different. Nobody ever like said, "Don't do band. That's not why are you doing that?" It was just kind of this matter of fact, like, well, you gotta choose because we got all these kids wanting to do this and all these kids wanting to do this, and things overlap, and we just don't really let kids do that. It's like, okay, you know, just kind of what it was. So that's why. That's also one reason why I really liked being at the 4A level because number one, we were the only high school. We weren't competing with another school in the district for funds or support or whatever. And then the kids did a lot of things, and that was great. I wanted them to do a lot of things. it was hard sometimes working out schedules, figuring things out, but we did that, and made it to where they could be successful at whatever they wanted to do because I didn't get that opportunity to do that. So I understand exactly what you're talking
So, are there any other band directors that really pushed you in the way of excellence?
He
Do I
named off
need more
quite the
than that?
list.
I
Do I
mean,
Yeah,
need more than
there's quite
that?
the
I
list.
mean, you like okay. So you mentioned this with Errol over at Kennedale.
Yeah.
Was there any other band director that you kind of said like, especially in early parts of your career, that were not like you know George Strickland or Errol or any of those kind of people that you were like, man, I gotta do the thing that they're doing.
Well, I mean, J.B. Perry, who was at Springtown, um, and when I was at Glen Rose, they were kind of in our region as far as like doing region band and trying out and things like that. And I always admired his program and what he had there. And then when I was at Springtown, he was the fine arts director for my entire time there, which that position was a half-time position. But he was still the fine arts director. And so he was still around and was still mentoring and still a big influence in what I did, and how I did things. He's a great teacher, great role model. Um, but as far as like other competitors and things like that, not that I can think of right off the bat. Um, there was always programs and directors that I admired what they did, but never really had that kind of relationship with them or were around. They weren't around enough, like they would move on to something else or whatever. Uh, I can always remember different programs that as a young director I'd watch and go, oh wow, like that's really good. I'd love to be like that, you know.
Like we're very fortunate right now that like there are two other programs in Region 8 and even our football district, because I mean you know how it is, like sometimes your football district doesn't allow you to see like super
Uh
like
huh.
great
Uh huh.
like
Uh huh.
high achieving band. And like this has been a topic that I've said, like we've seen successful bands, we don't always get to see competitive bands.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Like
There's a difference.
there is a difference, and we're very fortunate now that like we see China Spring every single year, we see every single year, and like we get to see each other's bands, and like I feel really great because like what you're talking about with like what you have with Errol, that's the same thing that I feel like I have with like Mark Nicholson over at China Spring, over at Robinson Wiley Gore, and like our relationship. Like I made a point to make a post of the three of us together when we like made state marching contest, and it's all like Region 8 representing, and like we cheered for each other, even though like we all kind of went like, oh, we're gonna be better than them, but we celebrated each other's victory in that. And
Right.
so and that's like something that doesn't happen everywhere. And
Well, and
like
I think similarly for me, I talked about Kennedale because that was the most consistent. Um, but there was also a time there where uh, Castleberry was very competitive as well, and that's where my wife went to high school. Was at Castleberry and was a drum major there under Phil Lakeman. Dave Daniel was at Castleberry, who he grew up under Phil Lakeman in that as the assistant, and then took over when Phil retired. But the first year that Springtown made state when I was there was 2012, um, and Dave was at Castleberry at that time, and they made state as well as Kennedale. So that was kind of for several years until Dave retired. Um, it was kind of that similar, those three from our region, and then we were all in the same football district at that time, so those were the three that I would say that drove the competitiveness in that area at that time.
so now you have a couple different roles, and one that is pretty cool that I think is that you get to observe and monitor the future of music education. So you are a field supervisor, not for just one university, but for 2 universities. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So I'm field supervisor for Tarleton and started this semester actually with UNT. Um, and I had actually done some work for Midwestern State University prior to this semester, but it was not band related. I was I was supervising whatever they threw at me. If they had kids that wanted to be in the Metroplex, then I was kind of the guy. And so with that, I was doing theater, math, um, a lot of math, which is kind of ironic because I was horrible at math. Um, but that taught me a lot too about how to be a better field supervisor for the band kids by seeing different ways of doing things in the math classroom or the theater classroom or the English classroom, or the elementary education classroom. So that taught me a lot. Um, but I started doing this in 2022 for Tarleton. They called me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing it. And I was like, absolutely, I'd love to do it. And so I've probably supervised about 30 kids for them so far. And really, really proud of the kids. Like they've all been outstanding as far as to work with, receptive to ideas, really work at um, trying to instill the ideas and the techniques that I teach them, things like that. This year, I was so happy. I had 2 first-year teachers come out from last spring that their first year took a band to contest, made sweepstakes their very first year. Um, so just some really cool moments with that because I don't want to just be the supervisor that just comes and watches you teach, but I want to try to build a relationship with those kids and mentor them. And one student that I had last spring, he's now the junior high bander at Brock and his first year. And Matt Daly, who's over at Brock, called me and he said, "Hey, I'm not always able to be there in that class or his classes. Would you mind coming and still being a mentor for him this year?" It's like, sure. So about once a month, I go out, spend a day over there at the middle school, and then continue to work with him. And it's just really rewarding because it's different than high school kids, but there's a lot that's the same as well. And so I get that fulfillment of building a relationship and kind of guiding a student, even though it's at a different stage of their life. Um, and so I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. This year, I took on UNT. They needed somebody to kind of cover some students on the west side of the Metroplex. And Dr. Michael Crawford, I don't know if you know Michael Crawford, but
We know Michael
Yeah,
Crawford.
I went to Baylor with Michael.
okay, well,
Michael was my drumline
okay,
instructor at Baylor too.
okay. Well, so Michael came to Tarleton about the time I graduated. He was a student, came into Tarleton, and then he's gone through all the different things, and now he's kind of the guy that's in charge of all the band um, student teachers at UNT. And so talked to him back in December, and he's like, "Yeah, I'd love for you to come on." And so I said, "Well, I've got 5 Tarleton kids this coming semester." And I said, "So with all my other stuff with UIL and stuff," I said, "I think I could probably take on 3 of yours." And he said, "Okay." So he gave me 3. I had a kid at Byron Nelson High School in Medlin Middle School that feeds into that. A kid at Eaton High School, and both of those are in Northwest ISD. And then I've got a kid up at Marcus High School. And so it's just seeing that side of things and how those kids go through stuff. Where a lot of my Tarleton kids are in smaller programs. I mean, some of them are in bigger programs like at Granbury or Weatherford or, some 5A, 6A programs too. But it's a little bit different atmosphere going up to, say, Marcus than, some of the other schools that I might see a kid at. And there's some different challenges with that too, you know. But it's been good, and I've learned even more from doing that this semester. I'll continue to do that come the fall with those guys as well. So that kind of keeps me teaching in a different way, because I still do a lot of clinics and I do a lot of marching band and concert clinics and things like that. But it gives me that one on one experience that you don't get as a clinician, you know, and the opportunity to kind of build a relationship that you might not get as a clinician with students. So I enjoy that part of it.
So what are some of the things that you see the most often with like young teachers?
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we come out of college and we think we're ready to tackle the world. We find out real quickly that being on the other side of the podium is a lot different than you think it is. And there's so many other aspects to being a band director than just music. And I think that's the most teachable thing that I can do with those kids is teach them that music is a vehicle. It's the way we create great humans. It's not just about the music. And I think some of them come out with that idea. I love music. I want to make great music. Okay, make great kids, you'll make great music. And that's, I think, the thing I have to teach them is you've got to build relationships. You've got to be more interested in the students as a person, get to know them, um, and care about them other than just how they play their instrument. Um, and I think they all get that. I think it's something that they have to learn. It's I think it's something we all had to kind of learn. Why do we become band directors? Well, we love music. Like that's probably the thing that drives us into that first. But if we really get down to it, somebody inspired us to do this, whether it was our high school band director or another band director along the way. I mean, we're doing this because of somebody else. And when they really think about it, that's what they come down to as well. Yeah, I'm probably doing this because of so and so. Okay, be that for these kids. That's the thing that I have to teach them more than anything else. I mean, classroom management, yeah, that's always a struggle. It's hard to teach classroom management in a class at college. You know, um,
Well, just put them in a room full of tuba players and percussionists. All right,
well,
guys.
sure, yeah, yeah,
I was going to say cats, but
Yeah.
that works too.
yeah. It's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay, all the tuba players on clarinets, all the percussionists on flute, and now teach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think that's the biggest thing is teaching them how to inspire and how to pull greatness out of students. I think that's the biggest thing that I try to teach them is it's not just about the music, it's about the student. Create the great student, then you'll create the great musician.
So, what's something you wish people would have known as a college student before getting into band directing?
I wish there was classes in college that teach you how to manage a budget and do online entries and understand all the responsibilities from the administrative side of being a band director. Um, Not just focusing on the music side of being a band director. We take conducting classes, we take method classes on all the different instruments, we do all these things, which we need to do. But there's such a learning curve when students come out. And this is partly coming from my executive secretary side of the brain, where I'm having to really teach new directors every year, how to go through the process, how to create a Texas Music Forms account, how to enter contests, how to be smart about what you select to play for contest. I mean, I've gotten on the phone with first year teachers and said, why are you choosing this music? You're at a 2A school, which is a struggling 2A school that you're taking over, and you're choosing a grade 3 piece, Deer and Day.
Yeah,
Why?
don't do that.
And it's that type of stuff. I'm not afraid to get on the phone and talk to you about it.
Somebody should. Somebody needs
Yeah,
to.
somebody needs
So
Well, it's
to.
just
very thankful that you're out there
well,
doing the Lord's work.
we've talked about this several times. Like there's certain pieces on the PML that like they look great,
Yeah.
but you just like Yorkshire ballad. Don't play it. It's a beautiful piece of music.
Or you just have to have like the super right
Yeah,
ensemble.
like play it on the spring concert. That's fine. But like don't like you're
Well, and
asking for
like,
trouble.
I just want to go into a college classroom and just have here's how to be successful at UIL day. Here's what you should pick. Here's what you should look at. Here's the pitfalls. Here's what you should steer away from. These are the requirements for this classification. Not that you need to play the minimum requirements, but you don't need to play grade 3 music when all you're required to play is grade 1 and you're a first year teacher and a rebuild. And you find out through questioning, and asking, well, why are you choosing that? Well, don't we have to play a ballad? Don't we have to play a slow piece? No,
No.
you do not. You do not. You have to play a march, but everything else just has to be on the list for your classification and your requirements. You could play 2 medium tempo pieces, both in the key of B flat or E flat. I don't care. Choose what is going to be best for your band to be successful and learn. That's the key. Is you want to challenge them enough that they're learning, but not so much that they're going to be unsuccessful, and get down on themselves because they're making 3s and 4s. So it's those types of things that I wish that they kind of knew a little bit more about, coming out of college. Is really how to select the appropriate music, what the requirements are, and how to go about the process, how to enter contests, things like that. Because we all have to do it. It's where there's no way around it. And so you might as well come into the profession kind of having an idea of how that works. And so I want to go into, say, Tarleton and have a day where I can just say, let's go ahead and create a Texas Music Forums account. Let's just put you in Region 7 for right now. You don't have to, we're not doing anything. We'll just create a dummy account, but let's just teach you how to do this, and let's talk about the PML, and let's talk about, what you should be looking for, what you should select, and learn to choose music that's right for your band, not right for your psyche or your taste buds.
Mhm. Yep.
you know,
Well, there are probably I think 3 classes that I wish would have been created in order to help me as a music educator. One is definitely like that kind of thing, like the ins and outs of like
Programming.
programming.
Yeah.
That I mean, we talk about it, but it's not like a huge focal point. And we like there's intro to music education and all that kind of other
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that we do that we're required to take, but like an actual like here is your budget. I think that would be interesting to have it in a class where like here is your budget, and then like it's like every now and then it's like the Oregon Trail but for band directors, like you're running low on reeds. Maybe,
I
maybe
thought you were
that's what
going to
we need
bring
to
up
do.
dysentery or
Yeah,
something.
dysentery. Yeah, maybe that's what we need to do, Chris. We need to go into this venture where we create a program that we can sell to universities where it's the Oregon Trail but band director mode,
yeah,
and you're like you have 35,000,
35,000.
35,000, 3,500,000. Yes, that'd be wonderful. But $35,000 as a 3A school for your school budget. You have to program a marching show, and like it gives you a list of all the things that you can spend money on,
Transportation.
and like throughout the semester, like the professor like hits a new obstacle. Like, oh my goodness, the trumpets have fallen apart.
It rained at a marching contest.
yeah.
Yeah, and just something like that to
Or I
kind of
spent all my budget during marching season to try to, have the props and all the things that everybody says we need to have, and now I have nothing left for the spring. Because I've seen that, and it's like,
I can't pay my UIL concert entry.
right, just all those things, and it's kind of like
this is the next step. Banyap on like the
I'm not a
programming.
coder. I don't know how to.
Man, that'd
I
be
don't know how to
great.
make a video game.
That's
I can do a lot of
we
things.
need to
That's
talk to
stretching me a bit
we
thin.
need to talk to UDD and see if we can
I
get
do
venture.
have a full-time job. I don't know if you know this. But
But like
Yes.
that's something that would have been like very beneficial, and like we touched on those subjects and did things like there's like but it's just not the same. I wish that a true blue repair class
yeah.
was
Yeah.
offered, like instrument repair, where you had to do like a semester on like true
And there are
repair.
some universities that are doing that now.
Mhm.
Um,
I think
Now.
that's great.
yeah, now, I mean, and that's how things go. You know, I mean, the idea here is to continue to interject programs or classes into things that are really beneficial. You know, I mean, we had band lit as a class, okay, but we talked about whole sleep and Carmina Burana and classic literature. Did that
You didn't
help me
talk
as a
about
2A band director? No. you
yeah.
know,
You didn't talk about Atlantis.
no, we didn't talk about
Blue
Atlantis.
Ridge Saga.
Oh,
The
again.
thing I
Bandit of the
remember, the thing I remember from that class when we started talking about anything that was, more middle school, small school, whatever literature was. This was back in the heyday of Anne McGinty and John Edmondson,
Yes.
and how every title sounded like a retirement village in Arizona. It was like, that's what I remember coming out of that class. Other than just studying some of the classics and stuff.
That's so true.
But it was true. Started looking at those times like Glenwood Canyon. Yeah, that's it. It's like.
That's so true.
And then the third class I wish that they offered was music advocacy in public education.
For
Yeah.
like,
And where like you are put in like actual scenarios.
or just like bring real administrators in too.
Yes.
You,
And like have conversations about like how to interact with administrators, how to interact with like like parents
or other programs.
yeah, other programs. Because I can tell you what, I'm very blessed at Gatesville that we have a very supportive admin, and like they understand music education, and like we talked about this before we hit the record button, but like what is the ultimate goal and point of like as superintendent and what they're trying to do, and having them understand what you are trying to do. And one of the biggest things I can always tell people is like people who are that are type A, they're very analytical, and so administrators want information given to them that they can understand statistically.
Data driven
Yes.
information.
And
That's
so if you can't provide that information, then like it's not going to happen. You can go in there and complain, but nothing's ever going to happen until you give them that information. And you said earlier that you became a master of the written word.
Well, the written proposal. Not the written word. I didn't write the Bible.
At the back of your Bible, this is a proposal from Chris. What is $35,000 for new instruments?
I did. I mean, and I will tell you too. I always had in Glen Rose and in Springtown incredible administration, whether it was at the high school level, middle school level, central office. Everybody was super supportive of the band program and what we were achieving and or striving to achieve, and all of that. And the one thing that I kind of learned, especially at Springtown, we had a superintendent who was awesome. He was my high school principal when I first started teaching there, and then he became superintendent, and now he's just been elected as the mayor of Springtown. Yeah, so he's just that natural leader. But Mike Kelly was very data driven, very had to have it in print, had to be justified. And so I just became really good at writing proposals and researching the data that I needed to justify why we needed this and all those types of things. And I would present that to him, and he would always just be like, "This is great. This is exactly what I need. I can take this to the board. I can speak logically about this to the board, and that's what they need to feel like they can do. If they're going to present something to the school board about why the band program needs $100,000 for new instruments, they need to feel like they can speak intelligently about that and justify it for you, you know? And so that's what I learned to do really well. And I mean, there was never a time that when I did those things and presented it to the administration that way that we didn't get what we wanted, whether it was new uniforms, whether it was instruments, whether it was another staff member. I did the research. I put it into a proposal where they could understand it, look at it, use it, and we just always were fortunate enough to be blessed with those things. So um, if you're not in the habit of doing that, I highly encourage you to do that, because I know different programs, different school districts, may be different, but if the person that's going to bat for you in a money situation or a personnel situation can hand out this proposal that's professionally done and answers all their questions, you are so much more likely to get what you're trying to get.
Well, it's the same way I think about resumes. Like whenever I see a resume that doesn't have a lot of effort or like cleanliness or clarity
Mm-hmm.
to it, I
Mm-hmm.
automatically put it in the no pile just
Yep.
because like if it isn't done right, if you didn't take the care and of attention to do your resume well, and that's something that is a representation of you, how can I expect you to do something at a high level and a high caliber with something that is much larger than that?
Right. And an extension nowadays, I mean, as executive secretary, I do an end of the year or not a proposal, but basically a report to the executive committee that has to justify every penny spent, every penny taken in, numbers for contests, how much participation, how many awards, all the different things that they need to know. And I do the same thing. I put it into a proposal style report, that's bound. It has a cover to it. It's laid out logically, and they can look at that, and I can present that to them, and they can, you know, understand what happened in the region for the year. You know, um, and so that's a skill that I have found has been very useful in many ways, uh, even post band director. So.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in our profession?
Marching band.
Yeah.
And I love it because out of everything in the music education world, the thing that continues to evolve the most is marching band. The marching arts, color guard, all of that realm. I mean, if you look at what it was when I was first directing to what it is now, it's not the same activity. It is just not the same activity. It's so much more involved now. Um, the kids are responsible for so much more from a physical, musical demand. I mean, it's not even comparative. It's just not the same activity. Um, and there's purists out there that are like, well, it's not just marching. I just want it to be marching band, and that's great. That's
March and
fine.
play.
March and play, and I had a large part of that. I mean, even when I retired in 2021, we never just stood and did body movement and play. We marched a lot. I mean, that was our thing. Um, and we played very well. That was, but those were the two things that got us where we were able to achieve. Um, I wasn't the most creative person. I had, when we started kind of collaborating as a staff and coming up with creating our own shows, which that was a new thing to me because for so much of my career, you purchased a show. The beginning of my career, you went on you went to Pender's and picked out a few Hal Leonard arrangements, and that was your marching show. And then it evolved into shows like Keep Ulan and uh, John Meehan and what they were putting out there is kind of box shows and stuff. And then it evolved into these custom shows. And so when we started collaborating and doing custom shows, it's kind of like, all right, everybody come to the meeting with a couple of ideas to start off with, just throwing them up on a board and just seeing what sticks. I was not the greatest at that. I was not the most creative. That I struggled with that side of it. My assistant Scott McFettridge, I mean, like he would come in and he would have, like we had this idea for Little Red Riding Hood type show, which we called Red, which is our show in 2016 that ended up winning area. And that show morphed, but it was kind of his original idea to do this, Little Red Riding Hood show. It's like, I would have never thought of that, and then a couple of years later, he came in with this idea of like doing a game show thing. And it was like the game of life. And we ended up having to put that on the side because it's COVID hit. And then I retired and they did it the year after and they just called it the game, but it was still the game of life. And it was kind of like the whole board game kind of situation. Yeah. He was very creative in those areas. I was not creative in that stuff. My contribution would be like, I was pretty good at finding music that fit the idea. Like we would come up with different parts of the show that musically this tells the story of what we're trying to tell. I could do that because I had a really pretty deep knowledge of just different styles and different compositions out there and stuff that I thought might fit. So we all had our strengths to that. But that has evolved so much from when I first started teaching. When I first started teaching, I was writing the drill. I was, doing all of it. And now, it morphs into now I have an arranger. Now I have a drill writer, and then nowadays we have a program director, and all these different things that kind of guide what we're doing. And I think that's great because the more creative we can be, the more kids are learning from that. Just the more entertaining it really becomes. There's some things that happen on the marching band field now that I'm just like, I can't believe it's a marching band, and it's not just the 6As or, the Hebrons and the Vandergriffs or whatever. I see that at the 4A level. I see that at the 3A level. I see that at the 2A level. One of the bands that I work with pretty regularly is Santo High School, Mark Belding out there. Those guys, I mean, he has 30 kids, but those kids, every single kid plays well. Every single kid marches well. They're limited in maybe what they can do from a production standpoint with the size of band that they have and things like that. But those kids, I mean, like, you can go into 5A, 6A programs where there's kids out there in the field that aren't playing a note. And they can hide that way. You can't hide in that program. Every single kid is playing their butt off, and so it's a different type of thing, but it doesn't mean it's less impressive than what some of the 6As are doing. I mean, it's just phenomenal teaching that's happening. So
good teaching is just good teaching.
It is. Doesn't matter what level you're at, and the reality of it is, and a lot of people don't know this, because I'll get this comment when I hire judges and stuff is, well, why are you hiring these guys? They don't have a clue what's going on in 1A, 2A schools. And I'm like, that's where they started out. Yes, they do know. A lot of these guys, that are in 6A powerhouses, they started off at 1A or 2A or 3A programs.
Well, so like we've kind of specialized in some small school stuff, and talking to so many of the people that we've talked to, we find out that they're from small schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like a lot of people don't realize like Robert Herrings is from McGregor High School,
Right.
like that.
Right.
He graduated from there, and his first job was over at Rockdale.
Yeah.
Which is not a booming metropolis at all. It's a
Right.
3A.
Yeah.
Taylor Williamson, who's won an honor band, he's over at Wiley Middle School, but he's from Garrison, Texas. That's a 2A. And he was telling us about how he marched as a 7th grader.
Right. Right.
Talking to Kim Shuttlesworth, she graduated from Carthage. Mike Howard, Do you know where Mike Howard's from?
Somehow I think I do, but I just can't. I don't remember right now.
Hondo, Texas.
Hondo. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Ryan Johnstone, Kemp.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I know
like,
Ryan. I mean, Ryan was up here at Alito Middle School for years, and when my oldest was in middle school and stuff like that, and I knew Ryan was at Kemp. Ryan went to Yale. You know,
yeah, yeah.
I was like,
What? What? What?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so all these people who are being like uber successful at these large schools, they've their roots are in the small
yeah,
school.
yeah.
And like that's not the case for every single director. But like that's something that we've noticed, and like we wanted to highlight that like we as small school band directors can make a huge impact in our profession through the students that we teach.
That's right. That's right.
And
That's right.
let it. I mean, it's just like it's crazy to think that like the fine arts director from Leander ISD went to a 3A high school. Like Jeremy Spicer is from Floresville, and it's just like we cannot short our, and I hate it. I hate it when we're like, well, we're just a 3A. No, shut up. We are not just a 3A. We're just a 4A. We're just a 2A. These you are a music educator first, educator. And like you are molding the future of like our profession. You are molding the future of our communities. You are molding the future to like the husbands and wives to are probably your children.
Yeah.
So like you need to buck up.
Well, and I mean, I had that conversation with a director recently. Um, and their argument was, well, we're just a small school. We don't have a lot of resources and stuff like that. And I said, so does that mean that you can't be an effective teacher? Does that mean that you can't demand excellence from your students? Why do students sit in with poor posture and poor hand positions and don't tap their foot and their stands are pushed all the way down and they're not even watching you? I mean, that's not small school. That's not because you're at a small school. That's because you're not demanding excellence. It doesn't matter where you're teaching. Demand excellence and kids will step up to that.
Well, so I've made a giant push in a couple different ways. One, I'm the type of personality that I always want to be told what I'm doing incorrectly. I mean, you and I had this conversation, and this just kind of goes back to that whole entire thing, because like I asked you to look over my comments from concert and sight reading and go like, please tell me how I can
Yeah.
improve, and that's like something I'm always looking for. We had a meeting with Evan Van Doren, and like who is a great educator and he's a greater person. But like we sat down with Evan for an hour through like a Google Meet or a Zoom, and I ran him through our program and what we do, and I sent him our schedule for things, and he just tore it apart because I asked him, I was like, what can I be doing better as an educator and a better facilitator to the student experience? And like, that was something that I wanted to happen because like, it's not about me, it's about everybody else. And so, and then I like something that we've been talking a whole lot with our leadership team and our kids that we're trying to train. And this is really cool. This is something that I'm really proud of is that like this all came from talking with Reed Atkinson was like his motto of like excellence in everything that they do. And you've said that several times. But like I told the kids, and this is our motto going into next year, that, and I mentioned it to our high school principal. I go, we need excellence in everything and everything in excellence. And that's that. I go, we have to do that. Like that is a non-negotiable for us from here on out. And I was talking to our principal about that, and she brought it to the guiding coalition for the high school campus, and they voted to have that as the school motto going
Yeah.
forward.
I mean, and that's perfect. And I'll tell a little story here, and this is not to embarrass anybody because Joe has told this story before too, but Joe Walker at Godly High School, when he first got there, and I was judging um, a festival that he was at, and he brought his band and everything. And it's one of these festivals, early season, like the end of September, where they would come, and then one of the judges would come down and do a little clinic with them, or give them some immediate feedback in person. And they were trying to start off, and I noticed just right off as the kids were walking up to where we were standing, um, just details about their uniform: wrinkled pants, scuffed shoes. They had white shoes and white pants. And so when it was my turn to speak, I looked at the students and I said, "Look down at your shoes." First thing I said to them, "Look down at your shoes." They looked down. I said, "What do you see?" "Scuff marks, dirty." I said, "So was your show." And that was like a real pill that they had to swallow. And Joe was like, that was an awakening, that we went to the band hall right after that and we corrected that. And from that point on, and I said, because students, look, if you can't polish your shoes and you can't have creased pants and you don't take pride in your appearance, if you can't do the simple things, how do you expect to get out there and march backwards while playing 160 beats per minute, 16th notes, or whatever else you're doing at a high level? If you can't do the easy things, so it's excellence in everything, and you have to learn to do that. You have to learn to do every little detail at the highest level you can do it if you want to be good at the big stuff. And he was like, man, that changed our whole outlook of things. And he and I had that conversation again here recently. I went out to clinic his group this spring, and he brought that up, and he was like, man, that like totally changed our whole approach. And it's just little things like that people don't realize. Okay, yeah, I may not see those scuff marks from the press box. That doesn't matter. You see them. You know they're there. And if you're okay with that, then what else are you okay with? Because those things are easy to fix.
Mhm. Well, first of all, I love Joe Walker.
Yeah,
He's a
he's
fun guy.
awesome.
Like
Yeah,
he's a great guy. I really enjoy talking to him. He's also just like a friendly, just like
yeah,
his like inviting. So
yeah.
shout out
Oh,
Joe Walker.
yeah, he's awesome. He's awesome.
Um, but one of the things that I've really kind of gravitated towards is like that whole entire like thought. But like we it was last year I really, really got onto the kids because like the things that you're discussing is exactly the way I felt. And I told my kids this, and there's one of our color guard captains made a flag of this because I had our assistant director take painter's tape and make what looked like a ladder, but it was a railroad track, and
Mhm.
we put it above our door. And I told the kids, if you act like the kids from the other side of the tracks, you will be treated like the kids from the other side of the tracks. Like you have to make a decision on which way you're going to act, and I'm going to make a decision on the way I'm going to treat you based on that decision. So like if you don't hold yourself to like accountability, then like nobody else is going to do that for you. And like I grew up poor, and I've said this on the podcast before. Like my dad always told me, he goes, we're poor, it doesn't mean we're dirty.
Right.
And it's the same kind of mindset. Like yes, we're a smaller school, we might not have the funding as large as everyone else, but it doesn't mean that we can't do the things that we're doing at a very high level.
Right. Right. And the proof is that there are those schools that do those things at a very high level, regardless of where they are or what size they are, um, what their socioeconomic, state status is, any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. One of the things that I was always really proud of, um, when we were taking Springtown to state and state finals, they would there was like this report that would come out, and I don't know who was doing it. I don't think it was UIL, But I would get this report, and it would be just like comparison of schools, ISDs that were in the finals at each level and stuff like that. And it would talk about, socioeconomic percentage, low percentage of socioeconomic students, different things like that. And Springtown was always like, I think between 50 and 60% of students that were in that area. And we were always one of the highest percentages of low socioeconomic um, in state finals in 4A. I mean, we were always up there, and I would always tell the kids, look, this proves that it doesn't matter if you're have all the money in the world and all the support from your parents or whatever. It's about what you choose to do. It's about what you do as an individual, because there are tons of people out there who grew up with nothing, who have become, billionaires or doctors, lawyers, whatever. It's all about you, and it's not about necessarily where you came from or what your status might be from a social economic status. It's just about what you do as a person and how you react to things that you can control. And I think that went a long way with them, because one of the things I heard a lot when I first got to Springtown was, "Oh, we're from Springtown. They don't expect much from us." I heard that a lot.
Oh,
Nobody expects much from us.
you and I are walking the same. Like, I'm walking the same path you did.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're just Gatesville. Oh my goodness,
Well, so what? I mean, what does that mean? Why can't that be? Yeah, we're Springtown. We are Springtown. Not, we're just kids from Springtown. Nobody expects anything from us. It's like, let's change that narrative, you know? And they did. They did. I mean, it's all about expectations and then supporting them and giving them the tools to achieve those expectations. You can't just go into a program and say, these are my expectations, and then don't offer your assistance. We were the private lesson teachers. We were the ones who met with kids individually after school or before school or in lunch or whatever to work on them solos or region music. We were 30 miles outside of Fort Worth, but most of the private lesson teachers wanted us to guarantee that they could have a full day's worth of lessons before they would drive out. We just didn't have that ability. We didn't have kids that had that kind of income that could afford to do that. And so we had very, very few. We had a few private lesson teachers here and there, but 99% of it was the directors. I would take care of the woodwind kids. Scott would take care of the brass kids. Chris Mashburn or Rachel Garza, whoever our percussion person was, would take care of the percussion kids. And we would meet with them 20-minute sessions, whatever, and that was it. That was the private lesson program. And we were successful, so it's about supporting them in your expectations, giving them the tools to do the things that you expect them to do. But that's where it starts. I mean, that's what it has to be. And you can't make excuses. My phrase with my kids was, excuses are like armpits. Everybody has them and they all stink. So just, that's it. Can't use excuses.
Yeah. Is there a mistake you've made that's made you a better educator?
Mistakes I've made. Gosh, I think one that sticks out in my head, because I thought about this a lot when you sent me those questions. There was a few years back, when the whole kneeling for the Star Spangled Banner started with Colin Kaepernick and the whole thing. Okay. And I didn't understand that, but we, at our pep rallies, the band would play, or pep rallies or football games, play Star Spangled Banner. And I had a few students, not very many, that wanted to protest it and sit down and not play. And normally at the pep rallies, our choir would sing the Star Spangled Banner, but we had one one Friday, and I don't remember what the situation was, but we were going to play it instead. And I had 2 or 3 students that told me that they were going to sit out. They weren't going to play it. And I got caught up on the fact that, to me, that was disrespectful. You're going to make me look bad as a director by doing that. And all of this stuff that was more centered about me, and I wasn't understanding their point of view. I wasn't listening to their point of view. And when it came down push to shove, they stood up because I got upset with them. They stood up and they played. And then afterwards, we went into the office and we talked and I listened. And I'll be honest, I cried a little bit because of listening to their side of the story. And not to go into specifics of it and everything, but I just tried to understand. And that not only made me, I think, have more empathy and understand maybe what another point of view was or why they felt like that was important to them. It also strengthened that relationship with those students. Like they are, just very close students. I love them to death, and I think they would do anything for me, But it took that moment of just sitting down and listening, and then came up with a compromise, and the principal came in, kind of said, school district lawyers, you can't do it, all this different stuff. And so we talked through things, and the compromise was instead of them sitting down and making that public statement in a gym or whatever, they were just going to step out into the hallway when we did that, so that it wasn't making a scene, and then they could still in their mind protest what they felt like was they needed to do, And so I think that was a real growth point for me. Just trying to understand another point of view, another experience that has caused them to feel this way, and not just seeing things through my own eyes or looking at it as to how it's going to make me look. So I think that was probably the biggest thing. And so I think it was initially a mistake that initially I turned it kind of around into a positive thing and learned from it. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we also like preach to like our leadership team is like you never know what is happening behind closed doors for other people,
Right.
or how other people are seeing the world, because like here's the way I've explained to some other people and that are really good friends of mine that you will never know the experiences I went through as a Mexican American, because you're not Mexican American. The same way I will never know what it is to be like a Caucasian man. I just don't know what that experience is like because I'm not. And so just coming to a common ground, like today, I actually had a really good conversation with a student about why I don't discuss politics. And he was all like, well, this is like, duh, 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 duh. I go, yeah. I go, the reason I don't discuss politics, one, it's not my place as an educator to like preach my politics to the public like that. I go, but the bigger thing is because like people feel so strongly about politics that I am afraid that other people will not be able to meet me in the middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that's the most important thing, is that like where you can have those discussions and you can have those like relationships and have those understandings. But a lot of time people don't want to be understood. They just kind of want to be heard and have the ability to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, everything is so divided right now, so far left, so far right. It's like the middle ground it doesn't exist anymore. And I feel like that's one of the things that we really do, or at least have the opportunity to do as band directors, whether it's through our leadership team or our whole band as itself, is we talk about teamwork, but a lot of that is compromise, and we have to sit down and be able to have conversations and talk about what's best for the group, not just what's best for this part of the group or that part of the group. And I think that is a skill that is just gone, like, is non-existent, at least in the media, what we see going on in the world, kind of things that are happening right now. And so, yeah, I mean, and I don't either. I don't post about politics. We've had discussions, and my family, as far as like extended family and stuff, I know what they believe, and I think they know what I believe. And it's not the same thing, but it's because my experiences as a band director, as a leader, are different from their experiences. And so I think I have a different outlook, and I have a different understanding of what it means to meet in the middle and understand we're all in this together, you know, versus this side or that side. It's like, why does there have to be sides? We need to meet together, so.
Well, and like for me and my family, it's funny because like I have one part of my family that is extremely left, and I have one part of my family that is extremely right, and we all have to sit at a table together for like
Yeah.
dinners, and it's like who's gonna say the thing first?
Yeah, and that's like I said. I think, like I think everybody kind of knows where everybody stands, and we don't really talk about it that much, just for, I guess, family peace. Not that I don't really think my family, my extended family on my wife's side or my side, is extremely political in nature, you know. But we have some conservative outlooks, and I'll be honest, I still consider myself conservative in nature, but I do not consider myself as the current conservative person or
The
conservative
climate,
party, the
yeah.
climate. I'm much more middle ground than
I will
that.
say moderate.
Yeah, moderate than that. I mean,
But I'm also the type of person that if I have see an opportunity to throw a flashbang into something, I will.
yeah. I've done that a few times too. And you have to pick your battles.
Yeah, like I've interjected myself into people's like arguments in like an HEB before.
He does that to
Yeah, I do
strangers.
that to strangers where somebody's like going like, I don't want crunchy peanut butter, and I go and I'll just interject. I'm like, yes, smooth peanut butter is the way to go, and I just like walk away, and like you can see the argument like ensue from there.
Jose's been known to cause a scene in a grocery
He's an
store
antagonist.
from
Yeah,
time to
well,
time.
yeah. I get in and I get out. Like, this is really awful. I don't know if you've ever driven your wife absolutely insane.
Oh, probably so. A lot.
Okay, so I have been known, and this is really awful of me. I've been known to lay down in the aisle of an HEB.
We haven't done
Okay.
that in a while.
Yeah, just because like I can't remember what you did, Alexa, but you did something very specific. You got snippy
Probably
with me.
sassed you.
Oh, this is a good story. This instead of laying down in the middle of
Is
HEB,
this about
this is
cookies?
yes. So one time, okay,
It's bad when she already knows what you're going to say.
yeah, well, okay. What was it? What holiday was it? Halloween, Valentine's Day.
I wouldn't say it was like
Those are the
Valentine's Day.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was something with cookies on sale from HEB.
The Loft
I
House
know
sugar
that's something that
cookies.
you wish you had a little bit more around you.
Yes, it
So,
is.
so HEB, well, they put out those like the sugar cookies, but they're the firmer sugar
The
cookies.
frosted sugar cookies,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know if they're sugar cookies. I don't know.
They're sugar
delicious.
cookies.
They're delicious.
They are.
And I'm the one paying for groceries, and so I just being polite, I go, hey, honey, can I get some some cookies.
That's not what happened.
Yes, it was. What happened then, Alexa?
Nothing that has to do with that.
No.
You're never that nice when you
Oh,
ask
yeah.
for something, and second of all, you
No.
would never ask.
Yeah,
You would just do
I
it.
sure
You were
did
more
ask.
no. You
I
were like
asked.
sassy.
I was
You were
not
like,
sassy.
"We should get some cookies or something like
Yeah,
that."
okay, like can we get some cookies? Like, so like she got snippy with me. That's the moral of the story.
Okay.
She got snippy with me. And so she was like, I'm gonna go get the vegetables. And so she left me alone with the basket. And so she went to go like get fruit.
I shouldn't have left you alone.
Yeah, that was a mistake. She left me alone. So as she walked away, I loaded a whole entire display of cookies into our basket, like overflowing. I think I had like 50 containers of cookies.
Just making a point.
Yes. Because like I was like, I asked for some cookies very nicely. You did sass me. I did not appreciate that. Like I'm vindictive in that way. I was like, oh.
Well, then I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, which is like a horrible trait because I know that my son is that way.
Yeah, he is. He is like that very much so.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not a taught behavior though, because we don't
No, we don't, and that's like inherent.
Yeah, that's within him.
Yes,
he was born that way.
Well, I think my dad was the same way.
Yeah.
Like it's just like the extreme opposite end. Like
unfortunately, like that manifests with us, but unfortunately, it mostly manifests with his sister.
So that's just like, oh, all right. Well, there's that story. That's a fun story.
So you're the Tigger.
Yes.
Yeah. I just can't help it. So what has it like been like stepping into the executive secretary role?
I mean, it's been good. I've enjoyed it. I've tried to kind of streamline some things just to make things easier. I think my philosophy as executive secretary is to try to make the director's job less cumbersome on all the things that they have to do to get ready for contest. For instance, instead of worrying about turning in, mailing forms or whatever, or emailing forms and not getting them, or they get lost in some thread of 50,000 emails, and things like that. I've created a Google folder for every school at every campus, so when it comes time to turning in forms for contests, they just upload them to their Google folder. And then I check them off on an online spreadsheet and they can look and see, okay, he's received all of these things. I'm good. And when it comes to like Form 1, because I've had the situation, and I know all secretaries have, where somebody shows up on the contest day and they don't have Form 1 and it's not signed, and it's like, what do we do? It's like, you got to get that thing signed and you got to get turned in before you can go perform, So, I encourage them a lot to get that turned in their Google folder before contest day, so they don't have to worry about it, and I still have a few that don't do that, and then they'll show up on contest day and not have it, and then it's this panic and it's this scramble. But I try to make it as easy for them as possible. I try to get their thoughts on who they would like to see invited to judge, but I hire all the judges. I don't farm that out to like the band chairs or the choir chairs or whatever to do that. Because that's just another job that they don't need and they don't get paid to do. And I know that's the case in a lot of regions. I did that when I was band chair in Region 30, where I had, to find the judges, and then I would turn that into the execretary, and they would, send them the contract or whatever, but I had to do all the legwork. But I feel like that's my job. That's what I'm getting paid for, and it's not their responsibility to have to worry about that too. So that's kind of my philosophy. Not to say that any other philosophy is not fine and works well for each secretary or each region. That's just kind of my own personal thoughts on it. I'm much more tech savvy, I guess, than many. And that's just because the age bracket. If you look at most executive secretaries, I'm probably the youngest, if not one of the 2 or 3 youngest doing this job. And so my experience has been more technology than some of the folks who have been doing this for a lot longer than I have. And so, I've created a new web page that I think is much more friendly. I've started doing some blogging that is tied into the web page that has things that are pertinent to UIL and contests and things like that have gotten quite a bit of reads. So I'm happy with that. And just try to do more with that. But generally speaking, just try to make it to where it's as easy as possible. And yes, I have some folks that are not tech savvy at all and they don't understand how to upload to a Google folder, or whatever. I've created little Loom videos and put them on our website to show them how to do that, or they can call me and I'll talk them through it. Or worst case scenario, there's still a few that will snail mail forms to me. But the mass majority of it, people just do that and find it very easy to do. So that's kind of my philosophy on it. I make myself available to the region, if they need somebody to come out and clinic or mentor or do a program evaluation, which I do some of that for folks where they just say, come out and just watch us for a day and tell us where we're falling short, and things like that. And I've developed kind of a packet, a program that I do with that, and fill it out during the day and kind of go through that with them on things that I think they can do better or be more effective or more efficient or whatever. Um, and so, with like the region schools, I try to do that for them at a minimal cost. I don't want them to have to pay their executive secretary a full consultant or clinician, so I try to give them a break on some of that stuff if they want my help. Several of them will take me up on that, and that's great. But that was kind of a question that was asked of me by the executive committee when I was interviewed was, what can you do to kind of help the programs in our region become more successful as an executive secretary? And, it's not really in the job description, but I kind of like that part of it. I kind of like, if I can offer something that can help you, I'm glad to do that.
Yeah, that's the whole entire mindset of a servant leader. Yeah, that's the basis of all of that, and I feel like you've done a fantastic job. I mean, I can tell you that like from afar, I like looked up to you and Errol over at Kennedale, and I was very lucky to work with Bob Vetter, and so like there was always people within reach. Was like those are fantastic programs, and those people are doing really, really, really wonderful things. I mean, like we would always know, like, okay, Springtown's going to advance the state marching contest, and it was just like always like a great show and a great product. But I think it's all in connection with to your servanthood to your program.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with culture. Period. I mean, and you have to demonstrate that culture. I think, when I was listening to that podcast earlier today with Reed Atkinson, he was talking about this a little bit too, and maybe it was you that was talking about it, one of you guys, but, they need to see that you're invested and that you're doing things behind the scene to help them, um, whether it's going home on the weekend and, evaluating a recording and making lists of things that you want to address and sending that out to the kids. Okay, mark these things in your music. I think that was something he was talking about or you were talking about. We did those types of things. Just all the different things. I made it a point that every Sunday I sent out the weekly newsletter. We had I can't even remember what it's called now, but it was an online program that we used for doing our newsletter. And it made it a point that the first thing that was in that newsletter every week was celebrating something in the program. Even if it wasn't a contest week, there was something we could celebrate. There was a section we could celebrate. There was something we could celebrate. And that was the first thing, that was in that newsletter to kind of get the attention of everybody. And then, all the other pertinent information for the week would follow that. But just doing those kinds of things, um, letting the community know what's going on, making the kids feel like they're special and that what they're doing matters and is special, and then just kind of building that culture from that standpoint too. That had to happen first. We had to have that buy-in, and everybody had to understand that this is about us. It's not about an individual. It's not about necessarily just music. It's about you developing, you becoming a good person, you becoming a human being, an adult that's going to contribute to this world, you know, and have an effect on other people in a positive way. Um, and that's the way I tried to approach it. And I think our staffs were really good at understanding that and doing that as well. Because we just had a real, from my viewpoint and what I experienced at both programs, Glen Rose and Springtown, it's just a very big family, and if kids had problems, where did they go to talk? They came to us. They came to our office. That's where they wanted to cry about a breakup or talk about a problem at home or whatever it was. We were their confidant. We were their counselor in a lot of ways. Um, and when you have that situation in your program, those kids will do anything for you. If they know you will do anything for them and you care about them other than as a musician, and you really invested in developing the person, everything else comes from that. And I've always believed that, and it's always worked for me anyway. And I think that's the that's the key in any real successful program I've been around. That's what has happened. I can walk into a band hall, and this is just experience too, because now I probably walk into 100 different band halls a year, literally, between student teaching and clinics, consulting stuff. I would estimate 100 band halls a year, and I can tell within 2 minutes what the culture is in that band hall. I mean, and that's how obvious it should be. Whether it's, especially on the positive side, you should be able to feel that culture when you walk into that band hall. And sometimes you'll walk into a band hall and you just know there's not a good culture. And you can see it in the body language. You can see it in the way they set up for a rehearsal, their intensity, their energy level, the whole thing. It's just easy to tell. And so, that's what I tell a lot of directors when I'm doing mentoring and stuff is, you know, go watch other band programs, go watch some real successful band programs, and feel what that feels like to walk into that band hall and observe how those kids get ready for rehearsal. Observe how those kids interact with each other. Observe their urgency to be ready, and then come back home and see, is that the same in your band hall? And if it's not, then figure out how you need to fix that. You know. So, but I think before you can have great music, great bands, you have to have great culture. And to me, that's the first thing that has to happen.
So, what's something that you do outside of, the consulting, which you do several of that, the region secretary, and there's and the field supervisor. What do you do to unwind?
I like to work in the yard. I know that sounds weird, but I take a lot of pride in my yard, and it's not as visible now as far as, but there's a Facebook page that's like band directors who love lawn care or something like that. There's a Facebook group for that, you know, and a few years ago, like we would all be posting regularly, on our manicured lawns and this and that, and it's like this. And the funny thing about it was all the guys that were on there doing that had really stellar bands, like because they're just so detail oriented. And like for me, band music teaching is a delayed gratification activity, right? I mean, it's always developing. There's really never any end to it. Okay. But when I go out and I work in my yard and I mow my lawn and I trim and I, manicure the flower beds and all that stuff, there's a finality to that, at least for the week, and then it all starts over again. But I can look at that and go, I've done a great job today, and I could do that in band directing too, but it's just not, this is more of an instant gratification thing where I can see my work, the progress, and I can look at it and go, I'm really proud of that. And I think that's kind of what it is for a lot of folks. You have this outside hobby that gives you a little bit more of an instant gratification because everything we do is so long-term driven, right? And so I love to work in the yard. I love to walk and ride my bike. That has diminished here recently just because it's been UIL season and it's been raining like crazy all of a sudden and just all the different things. But typically when I'm not up and on the road by 8 in the morning, I'm walking the Trinity trails. I'll do 2 to 3 miles a day, or I'm riding my bike 5 to 10 miles down the trails. I love to, and those are things that happened after I got really ill during COVID and, all of that stuff. I had to basically change my whole lifestyle. And so now I'm much more conscious of being active every day and, doing something to make my heart continue to be healthy and all those things. So that's been a change over the last 5 years that I never did up until that point. So, but I found a lot of enjoyment in that, that I didn't think I would ever do. And I've, the last 2 years at Thanksgiving, I've actually run a 10K. So, and that's something that for anybody who knows my story and that I was diagnosed with heart failure in 2020, right after we got sent home from COVID, I was diagnosed with heart failure and my heart function was at 5%.
Oof.
Yeah. And a normal heart function is around 60%. Okay. Everybody's like, well, why isn't it 100? Well, it's just not how it's measured, but I won't go into all the details of that. But now my heart function's back up to 55%. But it took me 3 years of hard work, losing weight, walking every day. Because when in 2020, after I first got diagnosed and all this stuff, I couldn't walk down the hallway at my house without breathing. And I didn't recognize that because I was always so busy that I didn't take time to notice how I was feeling. And my wife uses the term that COVID saved my life, because if we hadn't been sent home and we didn't have to stay home for that extended amount of time, I wouldn't have really realized how bad I was feeling physically, wouldn't have gone to the doctor, wouldn't have gotten tests done that show that I had heart failure, all the things that led to turning this all around, so.
Yeah, I mean that once again, it's about filling your cup in order to fill other people's cup, and like that mental health and that physical health. Like I just did this. What was it, Alexa? The
like mobile imaging thing?
yeah, the mobile imaging thing.
Uh-huh.
And so I had that done, and like there's one thing wrong with me, which I know
just
I
one.
Yeah, just one thing. Like
Just
I
the
don't
one.
I don't have any plaque in my arteries. I'm very fortunate in that sense because I'm a big guy, and so like I'm starting to think on this situation that I'm about to turn 40, and I'm going to start getting older, and like there are going to be things that I don't want to miss out on because like I'm a like I don't want to say late in life dad, but like I waited until I was almost like I was 35.
35.
I was 35 when we had our first kids.
Well, that's the same with me. I was mid 30s.
And so the idea of like I want to be around when my daughter gets married, and my youngest son when he gets married, and those types of situations. I want to see them graduate from college. And I know, and I really do understand this, that if I don't start making some life changes here pretty soon, that might not be a reality.
Well, and it's, I mean, yeah, learn that lesson now. don't learn it the way I did. I mean, please, because I was so busy at trying to be the best band director, the best dad, the best husband, taking care of everybody that I could take care of, that I didn't take care of myself ever, and I was so busy that it was, eating fast food at 10 o'clock at night after Monday night rehearsal on the way home in the car, and grabbing a McDonald's breakfast on the way to work in the morning, and sometimes not even eating lunch. Or if I ate lunch, it was fast food again, because it was all I had time to do or made time to do,
I
you
tell you
know.
what, there is nothing like a sausage wrap after a football game, though.
Like from the
Yeah,
concession
from the
stand?
concession
Yeah.
Well,
stand,
I
sausage
know,
wrap.
I know. I mean,
Ooh.
there's those guilty pleasures, and it's like now I've had to learn that those guilty pleasures are okay, but maybe only once every few weeks, maybe not every day, maybe not every week, maybe not, and it's been a real challenge. But when you hear a doctor tell you there's nothing he can do for you from a surgical standpoint, because that's what I originally was going to have, was surgery on my heart, because it was originally just some leaking valves. But when a doctor comes in and says there's nothing we can do for you, and you're asking that question of, well, how long do I have to live, and he tells you he doesn't know, that'll wake you up real quick, because that's what happened to me. And fortunately, the surgeon was only looking at things from a surgical side, and the cardiologist came in and said, well, there's some drug therapies that we're going to try, and we're going to do some aggressive things, but you're going to have to really get on a diet and lose weight and do this and do that. And I did, because I was 52, and my son was a senior in high school, my oldest, and my youngest was in middle school, like seventh grade. Am I going to leave these kids? Am I going to leave my wife at this point in my life? It's like, no, I'm not. And so that was a big wake up, and I tell this story because I know how we are as band directors. And I've seen way too many of us, you know, have health problems or pass away way before we should have, because of our desire to take care of everybody else, and we don't take care of ourselves. And somebody told me, I don't remember, I wish I remember who said this to me, but they said, well, you can't take care of others if you're not here to take care of them. I was like, yeah, you got to take care of yourself in order to take care of others. And that really hit home with me. Um, and that made a big difference in the way I approach everything now. Everything. Um, my parenting, my relationship with my wife, the way I approach work, try to have more of a work life balance. There's times where I will just make sure that I've scheduled nothing for an entire week, so that I can just have some decompressed time, and I can take care of myself time, and I can go get a massage, or I can do whatever that's more self-care oriented, and I can do that now. But I wish I had tried to figure out ways to do that when I was in the classroom. Because did I really want to retire at 52? No, because I still loved what I was doing. But the doctor was like, you have to. You have to change your life. You have to change your pace. You have to change everything. And that was a hard discussion. And my wife and I talked about it. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I don't have any choice. So, again, I say that because I hope it speaks to somebody out there. I hope that they will hear that and not want to get in that position, because it's not fun. It is not fun.
Well, Chris, we're going to switch to a happier note.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's in your ear this week?
I've been listening to the new Branford Marsalis album. Just came out a couple of weeks ago, maybe May 1st. I don't know. It's very recent. Um, I like to get. I listen to a lot of the same stuff over and over again. Like, I'll get a playlist in my car, and it just repeats, and it's almost like background noise at times. Um, And so I strive to, I'll get on Apple Music, and I'll just go like recommended for you or new releases, and I'll just start listening. And I've been finding some stuff here recently that I really like the new Branford Marsalis album. Um, there's a new Mumford and Sons album that I'm trying to get into. It hasn't hit me. It hasn't hit me as well as some of their earlier stuff, but I'm still trying to see if I like it or not. So that's kind of been what I've been listening to here recently. And then I've kind of gotten a little bit back into a snarky puppy phase again. So
That's always a good one to revisit. I all that I am, I like folk music.
yeah,
Like anything that has that like folky like feel to it, I really enjoy.
I do too. Yeah,
Just I don't know. I think it's just it centers me.
and I'm a big James Taylor fan. Um, I really like James Taylor stuff. And I found this arrangement of it was actually a jazz artist, Michael Brecker, who came out with, and this is probably old. I just found it this week though, and it's a classic tune. It's covered by Nora Jones. Can't remember the title right off my head, but James Taylor is on it singing with Michael Brecker playing tenor sax, and it's like really awesome. It's phenomenal. I'm like, this is not a collaboration I would have expected, but I really like. So
Those are always the gems. Like when you're just like, huh, didn't think that would work together. Huh.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like it's just kind of cool. But I've been in the car a lot these last 2 weeks doing student teacher stuff, and so that's when I really start listening to just trying to find new stuff, just constantly, trying to find new things, um, or listening to podcasts or something just different, because when I'm sitting here at the desk and I'm working, it's like the same old playlist kind of going, and
Yeah. Yeah,
it's just
definitely
work
where it's like
music. Yeah.
yeah, so that way you don't get like that. I have a hard time like listening to music because I start focusing in on the music
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
like I have to take myself out of it. Is there anything that you wish you could bring back from a different like decade or era?
Jimmy Johnson.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
That's a good answer.
That is
I am so done with this cowboy crap. I'm just like, it's been 30 years now, guys. 30 years. Like, that's over half my life that we have been not successful. So, I know. And so that's that. I thought about that one too. I told my wife, I said, my initial answer was Gilligan's Island.
I
Oh,
do.
yeah.
I do.
That's a good
love-
one.
And she's like, no, that's stupid. I was like,
no, that's
no,
great.
it's not. It's totally relevant.
I wonder what like a seventh grader would say if you asked them what Gilligan's Island was.
Oh, they'd have no clue.
I would
No,
love
I
that.
mean, even my junior son, he wouldn't know what it is either.
I'll
So.
tell him to look it up on TikTok.
Yeah,
so-
no kidding.
So here's the real question: Marianne or Ginger?
Marianne.
Yeah.
Is that what you were gonna say?
Oh yeah,
So I figured.
Marianne.
Yeah, it's just that girl next door kind of thing.
Yes.
Ginger's just like too
Hi,
into herself.
Yes.
So,
Do you have a guilty pleasure TV show?
yeah, I like anything spin-off or regular at the Yellowstone.
Oh, okay.
I love all the Yellowstone franchise, and this is still Taylor Sheridan, which I'm not a big personal fan of Taylor Sheridan when he's in his own shows. I don't like his characters, but I do like Landman. I started watching it again last night, just started the season over, and it's like, yeah, there's some really cool, funny stuff in it. And I like making fun of it because my wife teaches in Alito, and those first few episodes talks about the football star from Alito, and his daughter lives in Alito with his wife who's married to this rich guy now, and it's this whole stereotypical what they think of Alito is, and it's really not, but I like to make fun of her, and she gets so mad about it. So I don't know. I like that stuff.
That's funny. All right. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. So you have to answer these as fast as you can. Okay. Who is the greatest rock band of all time?
Journey.
Favorite action movie?
Mission Impossible, the last 4 especially.
Ooh. Is pineapple acceptable on pizza?
Depends on what else is on it, but yeah.
That was a
Okay.
long pause.
Oh, that was. Is a taco a sandwich?
No.
Toilet paper over or under?
For me, it's under because my dog will roll it if it's over.
Sousa, King, or Fillmore?
Sousa.
Favorite jazz artist?
Does this count? Buddy Rich?
No, I will take Buddy Rich. We'll take Buddy Rich. Are you allowed to tuck in your shirt without a belt?
No.
Favorite marching show of your career?
2016 Red.
Favorite stand tune?
God, that's hard because I dread them all now. We played one, and I can't remember the band that did it, but How Far We've Come. And the kids just played it really well. It was a very energetic song. I think that's probably my favorite.
Worst stand tune?
So many choices.
The Hey song.
The Hey song. Is it because it is the worst stand tune, or because of who wrote it?
Oh, it's just awful
Yes.
in every way.
If you had a spy code name, what would it be?
By code name. Wow. Billy Goat.
Billy Goat. All right. Do you have a hidden talent?
Not really.
What movie do you quote the most often?
I was going to say Yellowstone. No. What's the name of it? Tombstone.
Tombstone. Oh. Rip Val.
Gosh,
Oh,
there's so many good quotes
yeah.
from that movie.
Oh,
So
there
many
are.
good quotes.
There are. If someone played you in a movie, who would it be?
When I was younger, I would say Tom Hanks because everybody used to say that we looked a lot alike when he was a little heavier and I was a little younger. Now, I don't know. John Hamm.
That's a good answer.
Can you tell us about your dog?
Pumpkin? She's a little
Pumpkin.
turd. Pumpkin. Yeah.
Isn't that Kim's dog's name? Pumpkin?
Yeah, it is. Pumpkin. Well, we got her 3 days before Thanksgiving. My wife's dog, Addie, had passed away the week before, and we had to put her down. And we had been talking for a long time. We knew that was coming with Addie because she was old. And my 2 boys have had a dog, and my wife had her dog. We had 3 dogs for several years, and none of them were my dog. They were their dogs. And so that was kind of the agreement, was when Addie passed, that I could get a dog again. And I've had 2 Cocker Spaniels previously, and I always loved them. And so I said, okay, I want another Cocker Spaniel. So we went and found the Cocker Spaniel, and this was the Monday before Thanksgiving, and met this lady at Hewlin Mall in the parking lot. She had a little boy and a little girl, and my wife picked up the little boy. I picked up the little girl, and the little girl would not leave me. So I said, this is the dog. And she's fantastic. I love her to death. But today I almost killed her. So because I got up at like 7:00 and she had already been outside and it had already been raining some. And she's a digger, as most Cocker Spaniels are. And she had decided to come outside in the mud and dig her a hole and then come back in the house and bring all the mud with her.
Of course.
And it was a pathway from the back door all the way to our bed. And she jumped up on our bed covered in mud.
Oh no.
We have a dog that does stuff like that too.
Oh my! It upsets me so much.
I got so mad, and so I fussed at her, and she immediately ran back out the doggy door to outside. She wouldn't come back in because she knew I was upset with her, which gave me time to clean everything up. But by the time I finished cleaning everything up, it had started pouring outside, and she's standing in the backyard looking at me through the back door window. standing in the pouring rain just with this sad face. And I'm like, you can come in, you know. So she finally comes in, and I throw her in the bath and give her a bath, which all of this happens before while I'm having to get ready to go do some supervising today. And so it's putting me behind, and, whatever. This
the way
happens
we
with her a lot.
That's the way we feel about our children.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then when I get home today, she and I closed the doggy door, and she has a place in the house where I put a pad out where she can go potty if she needs to. But I was like, I'm not letting you go back outside and be bringing that mess in all day while I'm gone. So when I got home, she was all happy to see me and jumping all over the place again, and forgotten all about the events of the morning. I opened the door to let her go outside to go potty, and she would go outside. It's like, okay. So then I came out here to my office, which is separate from my house, and was doing some Zoom conferences with some student teachers, and she decided to come out and dig again. So I had to give her another bath at 6:00 this evening. So it's been one of those days with Pumpkin, but I love her. She's the most beautiful dog I've ever had, and just sweet as can be. So, yeah. But she's mine, and she follows me everywhere. Like I said, my office is separate from our house. You have to walk through the backyard to get to my office. And every time I walk out the back door, she's on my heels, and she will come out here and she will sit in this office until I leave. And just, that's it. So
That's a good dog.
She's great. Yeah, she's great.
So why baseball?
Why baseball? Because it's America's pastime. I don't know. That's the one sport I played a lot when I was a kid. I started off, I was really bad at it, and then became pretty good at it. And I don't know. I just love it. It's, to me, a little bit more graceful, a little bit more, has to be more strategy involved in some of the other sports. I don't know. I just always enjoyed it.
Do you have any fun baseball fact you would like to share?
Fun baseball fact? My oldest son and I started when he was like 12. We have a goal of going to visiting every Major League Baseball stadium. So we do this in the summer. And my younger son, he's not a sports person at all, but he's gone with us on several trips. But my oldest and I have hit 19 of the 30 so far. And so that's always a fun trip. It's always for the most part, it's always a car ride. We've had to fly to New York. We flew to Tampa, but then rented a car and drove, to several stadiums. But it's always a road trip type thing. And it's just the guys hanging out for a week and just having guy time. And it's fun. We just love it. We get our souvenirs from every ballpark. I always get a official on the field cap. My oldest son gets a pennant. His whole bedroom here at the house, or just his whole wall is pennants from all the different ballparks. And he'll also get a baseball. And then his grandmother, my wife's mom, was a big baseball fanatic, and she collected very valuable things like World Series helmet from the Yankees signed by every Yankee, or
Oof.
she has a Mariano Rivera baseball signed by him from the last game that he pitched. And she gave all these things to the boys. And so he's got this whole display case in his room that is full of just amazing, artifacts from baseball. So that's a fun thing for us. So I guess that's my fun fact, is 19 out of 30 so far.
That's a lot.
One of my baseball facts that I know that I love saying is why in center field there's always a display of waterfalls or any of that kind of stuff. Do you know the reason why for that? Why that is?
Well, that outfield section is the batter's eye.
Yep.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of people don't realize that. They don't have an understanding of why that is. That it's because in that era of baseball, people would dress in white
Mm-hmm.
and sit behind the pitcher.
Yeah.
So that you couldn't see the ball
See the
coming
ball.
at you.
Yep.
You'd lose the ball. Yeah.
But
So
that's
now
why
it's either a green space or, different ballparks treat it different ways, but it's always a very contrasting color back there so that you can pick up the ball.
Hmm.
Ooh. Who's the greatest hitter of all time?
I'm not going to say Barry Bonds, even though he's technically the home run, but that's the whole steroids age. I think for me, it's probably Hank Aaron.
I get behind that. You know who had for me, the person who had the prettiest swing of all time was Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah,
His swing was so pretty.
effortless.
Yes.
Either him or Ichiro Suzuki, like
Yep.
both of those different types of hitters, but like just an effortless swing.
One of my favorite videos is when Randy Johnson, the unit, explodes the bird.
The bird, yeah, that is awesome.
I was just like, what?
It's like, what are the chances of that happening?
You've made me watch that one.
Oh yeah, it's a great video. I mean,
it's 100-mile-an-hour fastball. I mean, that's going to destroy most things.
Yeah. My favorite player growing up was Frank Thomas.
Yeah,
that's who I like. I don't know.
Mine was Pudge Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah. Pudge. Oh.
And Ian and I got to meet him this past summer. We went to the All-Star weekend thing, and we went to the Home Run Derby. We didn't go to the All-Star game because he was more interested in the Home Run Derby. And those tickets are, ridiculous. So I said, we'll pick one or the other and we'll go. So we did the Home Run Derby, and then we went over to the All-Star experience over at the old stadium, and Pudge was there taking pictures. So we stood in line and got to meet Pudge and all that stuff. But Ian's met Michael Young and Pudge and a couple of other Rangers because, like I said, his grandmother was huge into the Rangers and baseball. And she took him to some of these special dinners that they had where they were honoring, just like ridiculous stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. They just don't make catchers like that anymore,
No.
Like Mike Piazza. Oh.
It's kind of like I think of catchers these days has kind of become less important. Like the running back in football is no longer, one of the big positions. It's kind of lost its importance because of the way the game is played. I don't think you can ever replace the catcher. I don't know why that's the thing, but I think they're more. They choose them more these days for their defensive skills and not necessarily their offensive skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit different era.
I feel like all baseball needs to bring back the handlebar mustache. I feel like that needs to be a thing. There was an era where
maybe you should grow one.
No.
Dude, that's becoming a thing again. I have a student teacher that has a handlebar mustache this year. He's one of my UNT kids, and he wears it really well. Yeah, it's really funny.
Not everybody can do it well.
No.
My
father-in-law is a big barber shopper, and for years and years he's had a handlebar. So yeah, but yeah, this kid, he's 22. And he's sporting this handlebar, and it's just but he rocks it. It's it's funny.
Not everyone has the face for it.
That's a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be gifted for that.
It's just like my dad. My dad had a mustache, and he couldn't have done anything else.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Luckily, you have a beard.
Yep. Well, I think that's all I got.
All right. Well, guys, it's been awesome. I've enjoyed talking to you.
To us,
well, we appreciate you sharing your stories, and really, if people haven't heard about the things you went through, that should be an eye opener.
Yeah.
Lots of people need to hear that, and then just kind of, the attention to excellence that it deserves.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that I want my students to know coming out is attention to excellence will get you a long way in this profession, and will make a lot of impact on your students. And it starts with the smallest details.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, all right.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Band Yap. We'll see you next time. Bye.
We out.